People from various clans around the Cloud Plain naturally gathered around the God King's throne. As soon as they saw Qing Yishuan make it into the rankings as a mid-God king, their eyes lit up. They immediately passed on this news to their clan. The God King's throne only recorded the strongest God Kings, so as long as someone made it into the rankings, even if they were only last place, it would be enough to make many clans and organizations try to rope them in. Not to mention how Qing Yishuan had made it into the rankings as a mid-God king, so the potential she demonstrated was so great that it was enough to interest all the organizations on the Cloud Plain. If a prodigy like that had been roped in, they would become a pillar of support once they matured. Immediately, the name of the Supreme God King, Qing Yishuan, spread to the ears of the people in charge of the various organizations. What? She's only a mid-God king, and she made it onto the God King's throne? Moreover, she ranks at 950th? Are you sure? Mid-God king? Really? What are you staring for? Hurry up and send people to investigate which organization Qing Yishuan belongs to, and then do all that we can to rope her in. What are you reporting a prodigy like that for? Rope her in immediately without even thinking. If she's willing to join the clan will nurture her with everything the clan possesses. Similar voices rang out in various clans across the Cloud Plain. As a matter of fact, this news even reached the two dominant forces of the Cloud Plain, the Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance. Immediately, the people responsible for the day-to-day affairs in the alliances sent people to the God King's throne. The teleportation formations near the God King's throne constantly flickered. People arrived there through their teleportation formations. They were from various large clans, and all of them stared at the rather slim figure that sat on the God King's throne. They all murmured, "Is that woman Qing Yishuan? She really is beautiful." Unknowingly, Qing Yishuan had already become the center of attention. However, Qing Yishuan did not sense any of this. She sat there without moving at all with her eyes closed. She had no idea that she had shaken up the Cloud Plain. Only half a day later did Qing Yishuan open her eyes slowly and glide down from the God King's throne. Her name had risen from 950th to 940th. She truly was strong since she could rank so high, ranking above so many peak God Kings as a mid-God King. Fellow Qing Yixuang, we are from the Zaheo Empire of the Eastern region. I was wondering if you would grant us the honor and come visit our Zaheo Empire. The Zaheo Empire of the Eastern region was an eternal empire. They had chaotic primes and once stood supreme in the Eastern region. Even after the changes on the Cloud Plain, the Zaheo Empire was still a peak organization in the Eastern region, and they had the right to state what they thought. Fellow Qing Yishuan, I'm from the imperial family of the Jinjian Empire of the Eastern region. Under my father the Emperor's orders, I've specially come to invite you to our Jinjian Empire as a guest, said an old man. He was a primordial realm expert, a first heavenly layer infinite prime. The Jinjian Empire placed an unbelievable amount of focus on Qing Yishuan by sending a primordial realm expert to invite her over. Afterwards, representatives from various organizations stated their identities. They either invited Qing Yishuan over, or they directly asked about her origins. They used various methods to try to rope her in. There were stronger and weaker organizations among them. The weaker were organizations with only infinite primes, while the stronger were like the Zaheo Empire and the Jinjian Empire. Humph! Suddenly, a cold snort rang out. It was thunderous, and it immediately silenced everyone. An imposing young man directly ignored the fact that flying was forbidden in the city and stood high in the air. He said, "Woman, I'm Hu Wei, the Lord of the Battle Hall from the Four Symbols Alliance. With your potential, you will definitely receive the full support of our Four Symbols Alliance. It'll only be a matter of time before you reach the peak." Qing Yishuan immediately frowned when she heard this person mention the Four Symbols Alliance. Although she still did not understand the situation on the Cloud Plain very well, she had heard about the two organizations in control of the Cloud Plain. Neither of them was in existence she could afford to offend. Humph! Is your Four Symbols Alliance supposed to be impressive? Aren't you just the cowardly remnants of the Tian Empire that we've chased to the southern region? Since when did you become so arrogant? A scornful voice rang out after Hu Wei spoke. An elegant handsome young man in white robes walked over from a distance steadily with a fan in his hand. He looked at Hu Wei like he was challenging him. Hu Wei's face sank slightly when he saw the white-robed young man. He balked coldly. "Tong Tian, it's you. If it weren't for the Tong family behind you, I would only need a flick of my finger to kill you, you mere overgod." Tong Tian curled his lips scornfully and replied, "Hu Wei, Don't you think your nonsense called the Lord of the Battle Hall or something is impressive? If it weren't for the fact that you have the Four Symbols Alliance behind you, I would only need a single word to have you disintegrated. Your so-called occupation of Lord of the Battle Hall is Jack T in front of me. Why don't you run back to the southern region obediently? The central region isn't a place you should come to. You! Tong Tian's words made Hu Wei so angry that he could no longer reply. His face darkened and paled. He was furious. However, he did not dare to lay his hands on Tong Tian. Although he had no need to take Tong Tian, who was only an overgod, seriously at all, Tong Tian's identity was significant. He was the most beloved descendant of the ancestor of the Tong family, Tong Wuming. In the end, Hu Wei looked at Qing Yishuan, who stood in front of the God King's throne. Tong Tian's appearance and scornful remarks had put him in a bad mood. With a cold expression, he asked, Qing Yishuan, are you willing to join our Four Symbols Alliance? Qing Yishuan became troubled. Originally, she only wanted to attempt the God King's throne and return to the Tian Yuan clan as a supreme God King so that she could elevate the fame and status of the Tian Yuan clan. In the end, she underestimated the weight that the God King's throne held in the Saints' world. She never thought that a single ranking would make her famous and even draw over the people from the Four Symbols Alliance. Not just that, Tong Tian, who seemed to come from a large clan, had appeared as well. Tong Tian's appearance had put Hu Wei in a rather embarrassing situation, while the reason why Hu Wei had been angered by Tong Tian arose from her in the first place. If she did not accept Hu Wei's invitation, she might end up offending the Four Symbols Alliance. If she was alone, she would not care. If she offended them, then so be it. She could just leave the Cloud Plain if worst came to worst. However, the Tian Yuan clan founded by Jian Chen was here as well. If she offended one of the two major powers of the Cloud Plain right from the start, it would be extremely detrimental to the Tian Yuan clan. After a moment of hesitation, Qing Yishuan clasped her fist and said, Thank you for your kind intentions, but I already have a clan. It would be inappropriate for me to join another organization. Hu Wei's face sank from that. His voice gradually turned cold as he asked, May I ask which clan you come from? Hu Wei was already in a bad mood. Coupled with Qing Yishuan's declination, he immediately became furious. He secretly swore that no matter which clan Qing Yixua belonged to, he would teach them a lesson. The Four Symbols Alliance was one of the two major powers of the Cloud Plain. They stood against the Righteous Alliance and were a colossal existence on the Cloud Plain. Aside from the Tian Yuan clan in the southern region, there really was no organization that the Four Symbols Alliance could not afford to offend. Hu Wei did not think too much about Qing Yishuan's identity as a Supreme God King. Being a Supreme God King was only a representation of potential. It did not mean they would be able to reach the peak of their potential. They might end up dying halfway. Such a thing had happened not too long ago. Half of the names on the God King's throne had directly vanished. Chapter 24-28. The deterrence of the Tian Yuan clan. Hu Wei's forcefulness angered Qing Yishuan slightly. Although Hu Wei was a primordial realm expert, he was only a first heavenly layer infinite prime. He had only broken through recently. Although there was still a certain gap between infinite primes and her current level of cultivation, Qing Yishuan did not fear him at all. This was because she had obtained Swordmaster Yun Qi's legacy. There were several extremely powerful secret techniques within the golden core of laws from Swordmaster Yun Qi. They possessed startling power. If she used them, she could instantly kill opponents of the same level. She could even handle those who had recently stepped into the primordial realm. However, Qing Yishuan dreaded the Four Symbols Alliance behind Hu Wei very much, so she could only endure his aggressiveness. What does that have to do with you? Hu Wei, don't forget that you were a regular God King who could not even make it onto the God King's throne in the past. Even if you've reached the primordial realm now, there's not a great future ahead of you. You're nowhere close to any of the Supreme God Kings who have made it onto the God King's throne in terms of status and future, said Tong Tian as he snickered to one side. The Righteous Alliance and Four Symbols Alliance had never been on particularly good terms, so he did not hold back at all. Afterwards, Tong Tian looked at Qing Yishuan and said politely, I come from the Tong family of the central region. Aside from the southern region, all the regions of the Cloud Plain are under our Righteous Alliance's control. As a result, there is no need for you to worry about the Four Symbols Alliance here at all. They won't dare to do anything reckless. Tong Tian ignored Hu Wei's darkened face and continued, Of course, you are welcome to join our Tong family. As long as you become a part of our Tong family, Even the higher echelon of their Four Symbols Alliance would have to properly think of the consequences of offending our righteous alliance, let alone a mere lord of the battle hall. Thank you for your kind intentions, but I already have a clan, so it's inappropriate for me to join other organizations, said Qing Yishuan, declining once again. How about this? Tong Tian did not try to force anything on her. After a moment of thought, he continued, why don't you tell me which clan you belong? I can let the people in the alliance keep an eye out for you, just in case the Four Symbols Alliance decides to make trouble for you. The Four Symbols Alliance consists of the remnants of the Tian Empire. They tend to do everything they can to get what they want, so it's best to be wary of them. Qing Yishuan hesitated when she heard that. According to her understanding, the clan founded by Jian Chen was only a small, nameless clan in the Saints' world. Perhaps they did not have another god king aside from Jian Chen in the entire clan. After all, she knew Jian Chen's origins extremely well. Although Jian Chen was the human sovereign on the Tian Yuan clan, the Saints' world was no resource-lacking Tian Yuan continent. How long had it been since he came to the Saints' world? It was impossible for him to create a powerful clan in such a short amount of time. If she revealed that she came from a tiny Tian Yuan clan, probably both the Four Symbols Alliance and the Tong family could make the entire clan vanish with a single breath. As a result, Qing Yishuan felt troubled. She had no idea whether she should tell them. After all, the Tian Yuan clan was just too small. If it raised the attention of the dominant organizations on the Cloud Plain too soon, it would not be a good matter. However, when she realized that both the Tong family and the Four Symbols Alliance could discover that she came from the Tian Yuan clan with the slightest investigation, she stopped hesitating. She said, my clan is a small place called the Tian Yuan clan in the Pingtian Empire of the southern region. It's nothing impressive, so the Righteous and Four Symbols Alliance naturally will not know about it. Qing Yishuan had already become prepared for the worst when she mentioned the Tian Yuan clan. As soon as Hu Wei wanted to overwhelm the Tian Yuan clan, she would lead the people of the Tian Yuan clan against the threat and fend off Hu Wei. If they really ran out of choices, she would join the Righteous Alliance to fend off the Four Symbols Alliance. However, what confused Qing Yishuan was that as soon as she mentioned the Tian Yuan clan, both Tong Tian and Hu Wei revealed extremely strange expressions. It was not just the two of them. Even the other representatives of various organizations in the surroundings revealed rather interesting expressions. What did you say? You're from the Tian Yuan clan? Really? Hu Wei's face changed. He stared straight at Qing Yishuan, and he became extremely stern. The Tian Yuan clan was the only organization on the Cloud Plain that the Four Symbols Alliance did not dare to provoke. Hu Wei had never thought that a person he met on the street would actually come from the Tian Yuan clan. Sure, he was a primordial realm expert and the lord of the battle hall in the Four Symbols Alliance. However, if he actually offended someone important in the Tian Yuan clan, the people in charge of the Four Symbols Alliance would skin him alive. You're actually from the Tian Yuan clan? Who are Jian Chen and Ming Dong of the Tian Yuan clan to you? Tong Tian snapped his folding fan shut and stared at Qing Yishuan with brimming interest. Now, Qing Yishuan was the one in doubt. According to her understanding, the Tian Yuan clan should have been a small clan that did not hold any importance at all. However, it seemed like a completely different case from everyone's reactions and expressions. This young master of great renown actually knew Jian Chen and Ming Dong, which surprised her very much. Jian Chen is my good friend, while Ming Dong comes from the same homeland as me, said Qing Yishuan. Her relationship with Ming Dong was nowhere near as close as her relationship with Jian Chen, but they did come from the Tian Yuan clan. As such, she could only say that they shared the same homeland. Tong Tian came up with an evil idea and said strangely, I know Hu Wei's personality and temperament extremely well. When you declined Hu Wei's invitation earlier, you've completely offended Hu Wei. According to his personality, he will definitely seek revenge. He might even use the power of the Four Symbols Alliance to destroy your clan. As a result, when you return, you have to explain this to the people of the Tian Yuan clan so that they can handle this appropriately. Qing Yishuan's face changed slightly when she heard that, but she seemed to sense that something was off. Shut up, Tong Tian. Quit spewing bullshit. However, before she could think too much about it, Hu Wei had cut Tong Tian off with a darkened expression. Afterwards, he changed from his cold and haughty manner drastically and clasped his fist towards Qing Yishuan with a face full of smiles. Lady, ignore Tong Tian's blabbering. The Four Symbols Alliance is the Tian Yuan clan's best friend, the best neighbor, So how is it possible for us to do anything to the Tian Yuan clan? What happened before was all a misunderstanding, so please don't take it to heart. If I have offended you in any way, I will make it up to you in the future. Qing Yishuan stared at Hui blankly. The haughty lord of Battle Hall of the Four Symbols Alliance was now apologizing to her submissively. The drastic change in behavior left Qing Yishuan at a loss. She had no idea what had just happened. Is the Tian Yuan clan a peak organization that even the Four Symbols Alliance does not dare to offend? This thought suddenly appeared in Qing Yishuan's head, but she quickly shook her head. She refused to believe it. Are you looking to return to the Tian Yuan clan? Allow me to lead the way. Hui's attitude changed completely. He was very enthusiastic, leading the way for Qing Yishuan with great politeness. Chapter 24-29. Returning the Anata Tower afterwards, the doubtful Qing Yishuan headed to the southern region through a teleportation formation under Hui's enthusiastic and warm treatment. At the same time, on the distant Prosper Plain, Jian Chen stood beneath the God King's throne and stared at Qing Yishuan's name quietly as it rose to 940th. He sank into his thoughts. He understood that from the moment she received Swordmaster Yun Qi's legacy, she had begun to rise up. Although he had no idea just how great her future accomplishments would be, it would definitely be more than this. Dismissing his thoughts, Jian Chen no longer paid any more attention to the God King's throne. He turned around and disappeared into the crowd. If it were not for what happened on the Star Brilliance Plain and Kaiya was still present, he might have been happy for Qing Yishuan. However, all he felt was fury and hatred now. He could not lighten up at all. Jian Chen was in no hurry to go to the heavenly palace of Bisheng located in the central region of the Prosper Plain. First, he rented an estate within the bustling city. The estate was quite large, and it was covered with formations, making it extremely tough. Jian Chen had only managed to rent it with 5 colored divine crystals. A secret room deep underground was located in the estate. Jian Chen activated all the formations in the estate and sat down in the underground room. The damaged Anata Tower appeared before him quietly. The sword slashes on there stood out. Jian Chen just sat there, staring at the Anata Tower. The Anata Tower had come from the sea realm in the world of the Tian Yuan continent. He had faced many disasters along the way, and quite a few of them had been blocked by the Anata Tower. In other words, he definitely would not be here today if it were not for the Anata Tower. As a result, he felt some attachment to the Anata Tower. But now, the Anata Tower was about to leave him. However, Jian Chen was not reluctant to part with it. The Anata Tower was powerful, but it was already damaged and extremely difficult to refine. It would be impossible for him to unleash its full power. As his strength increased in the future, the assistance the Anata Tower could provide would only reduce. Moreover, the Anata Tower was an object of desire, eyed by all people. It had caused him quite a few problems in the past few years. As a matter of fact, Kaiya had died because of it. This was why he felt no reluctance in returning the Anata Tower to the heavenly palace of Bisheng. The most precious thing about the Anata Tower is the slashes on it. These slashes were left behind by the greatest expert of the Immortals world in the past, the Nirvanic Sword Immortal. Every single slash contains the will of a sword god. If I could just comprehend a sliver of it, I would definitely benefit, thought Jian Chen. He stared at the sword slashes on it for a while before entering the Anata Tower with a flash. The Anata Tower had a total of 9 floors. The 9 floors were like 9 worlds. However, each world was damaged. A strand of sword chi several tens of thousand meters long hovered at the end of each world, within the shattered space, preventing the 9 worlds from automatically healing. Jian Chen arrived at the edge of the world on the first floor. Before him was dark nothingness. It was the destroyed world. He sat down and closed his eyes, beginning an attempt to comprehend the sword chi left there by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. In the past, he was unable to comprehend these strands of sword chi at all due to his limited strength and cultivation, but he was already a sword immortal now, a primordial realm expert. The Anata Tower was about to leave him, so he wanted to try one last time. However, very soon, Jian Chen's body shook, and his face became rather pale. He opened his eyes, and he stared at the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt sword chi with mixed feelings. He sighed powerlessly. The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt was just too powerful. As soon as Jian Chen tried to comprehend it, he felt the sword chi spring to life and stab into his soul, causing splitting pain in his head. It was like his soul was being torn to pieces. It still doesn't work. I probably need to reach Sword Sage at the very least to comprehend this strand of sword chi. After all, these strands of sword chi left behind by the Nirvanic immortal Exalt in the past were all used for suppression and killing. Every single strand contains extremely great offensive power. They're nowhere near as gentle as imprints used to pass on laws. Jian Chen felt great pity. He had only broken through to Sword Immortal recently, so he was just too far away from Sword Sage. Afterwards, he arrived on the 9th floor and stowed the Fortune Jade away. In the end, he left with the empty Anata Tower, arriving in the central region of the Prosper Plane through a teleportation formation. The central region was where the Heavenly Palace of Bixing stood. The Heavenly Palace of Bixing held supreme authority on the Prosper Plane. No one dared to defy them. They all held the Heavenly Palace of Bixing in supreme regard. Jian Chen arrived before the Heavenly Palace of Bixing on this day. From a distance, he could see a familiar, golden hall. The hall stood there silently like it reached towards the sky. A majestic might made all the ways of the world seem to revolve around it. As a result, the divine hall seemed like the only existence in the world. Is this the Heavenly Palace of Bixing? It's exactly the same as the projection of the divine hall I saw on the 9th floor in the past. Jian Chen felt extremely shocked as he looked at the majestic divine hall up ahead. He was a primordial realm expert, so his senses were extremely great. Not only did he feel insignificant as he stood before the divine hall, but he also discovered to his surprise that as he rapidly approached the divine hall, his grasp and ability to sense the way of the sword became weaker and weaker. It was as if the existence of the divine hall had suppressed all the ways, where no cultivator could use the ways they comprehended as they wished before it. State your identity. At this moment, a divine general in golden armor appeared before Jian Chen silently, blocking his path. The divine general was a god king, but his presence was so powerful that it was no weaker than the supreme god kings from the god king's throne. The Heavenly Palace of Bixing was one of the most powerful organizations in the Saints' world. Who knows how many experts wanted to join the Heavenly Palace of Bixing in the Saints' world? Even if they became a divine general, it would be a great honor. As a result, every single divine general of the Heavenly Palace of Bixing would be picked from countless prodigies. Every single one of them possessed extremely great battle prowess. Coupled with the Heavenly Palace of Bixing's nurturing, they could claim to be invincible among the same level of cultivation. I've come to return the Anata Tower. Jian Chen directly took out the Anata Tower. The eyes of the divine general immediately narrowed when he saw the Anata Tower in Jian Chen's hands. He glanced at Jian Chen deeply and said, "Come with me. I'll take you to Sir Bixing." Chapter 2430. The First Majesty. The Grand Heavenly Palace of Bixing was extremely quiet inside. Jian Chen followed the divine general through the structure. He felt like the laws of the world here were as vast as the ocean. It was as if the entire Heavenly Palace of Bixing was forged from the ways of the world, and everything he saw there hid the truths of the world. They contained endless mysteries as if they were created by nature itself. It really is a peak god artifact in the world. Jian Chen was secretly amazed as he studied the Heavenly Palace of Bixing. He had already heard that the Anata Grand Exalt had a total of 3 treasures. They were the Heavenly Palace of Bixing, the Anata Tower, and the Fortune Jade Pedestal. The Heavenly Palace of Bixing standing before him right now was a treasure at the same level as the Anata Tower. However, the Anata Tower was damaged, and it had been sealed up by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt's sword chi. It no longer possessed the might that a peak god artifact should possess. As a result, the Heavenly Palace of Bixing invoked far more shock in Jian Chen's heart. "Sir, Jian Chen has been brought over," said the divine general respectfully. He stopped within a majestic hall within the Heavenly Palace of Bixing before speaking to the empty hall. "You are dismissed." An obscure voice rang out from the empty hall. It sounded like an old man who was brimming with energy. "Yes, sir." The divine general bowed politely before backing away. Jian Chen clutched the Anata Tower as he stood there calmly. He looked around, but he did not see a single person. "Are you that Jian Chen who ran amok through the entire world with Master's treasure?" The old voice rang out once again. However, it was no longer obscure this time. Instead, it rang out from behind Jian Chen. Jian Chen was startled. He immediately looked back. A white-robed old man had appeared behind him at a certain time. The old man was completely snow-white. His gaze was profound, seemingly possessing the power of galaxies. He did seem slightly sage-like. He had appeared behind Jian Chen silently. Even with Jian Chen's current strength, he was unable to sense the old man's existence. When his soul swept over, he found nothing as well. It was like the old man's existence could only be found by sight. All other senses were useless. Stop searching. You're too weak, so it's impossible for you to sense my existence. Become a Grand Prime first if you want to do that, said the old man rather proudly as he stroked his long beard. Senior, you are? Jian Chen clasped his fist and asked cautiously. I am Bishing, the hall spirit of this divine hall, said the old man. So it's Senior Bishing. Greetings from Junior Jian Chen. Jian Chen clasped his fist. He glanced at Bishing before looking at the Anata tower in his hand. He hesitated. He had come here to return the Anata tower, but in the end, he only met was an artifact spirit. He was obviously rather unwilling to hand over something as important as the Anata tower to an artifact spirit. Perhaps he saw Jian Chen's hesitance, but Bishing snorted gently and waved his hand. With his back to Jian Chen, he said rather proudly, aside from Master and the few majesties, I hold the greatest authority in the heavenly palace of Bishing. If you have any demands, just tell me. Senior Bishing, I wish to see the First Majesty. Jian Chen clasped his fist. The renown of the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing was as prominent as thunder to his ears. She was a supreme expert who stood at the very peak of the saint's world, an existence only second to Grand Exalts. Since he was going to return the Anata tower, he needed to hand it to the First Majesty. The First Majesty was the one in charge within the heavenly palace of Bishing. She could command everyone and was a peak expert who stunned the entire saint's world. Brat, although it's quite the merit for you to return Master's treasure, who do you think the First Majesty is? Is she someone you can see just because you want to? Bishing said with displeasure. If I don't see the First Majesty, I won't return the Anata tower, Jian Chen said firmly. He did not back away. Although he was within the heavenly palace of Bishing right now, where his life was in someone else's hands, he did not worry at all. The heavenly palace of Bishing was a peak organization in the saints' world. The more colossal they were, the more they cared about their pride. The heavenly palace of Bishing definitely had no reason to trouble him now that he had come to return the Anata tower after so many difficulties. Kid, I've already shown you enough respect by receiving you personally. Don't demand for more than what you deserve. Bishing frowned. He felt like he was being underestimated. Bishing, you can go. At this moment, a pleasant but cold voice rang out. A woman slowly walked over from the other side of the hall. The woman gave off the presence of the ways, and she was shrouded by a dazzling light. Only a hazy figure was visible from the outside. Jian Chen's heart immediately shuddered when he saw the woman. He was able to recognize with a single glance that the woman shrouded in light was the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing, Xueqi. His soul had once fused with the clone of the Samsaric immortal Exalt in the Neptunian divine palace, and clashed with the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing from the Samsaric immortal Exalt's point of view. At that time, he had been deeply stunned by the First Majesty's strength. The Neptunian divine palace was a high-grade god artifact. Its defenses were astonishing, but even with its many powerful formations, it had not been able to stop the First Majesty. She used an extremely short amount of time to get through the formations and infiltrate the interior, dispersing the Samsaric immortal Exalt's clone. Although it was only a clone of the Samsaric immortal Exalt, possessing strength nowhere close to the original body, it was still a Grand Exalt's clone after all. All of this demonstrated the terrifying strength the First Majesty possessed. As a result, Jian Chen felt his heart tighten as he faced the First Majesty. After all, the person before him was only a step away from becoming a Grand Exalt. As long as she took that step, she would become a sovereign of the world. This tower is Master's treasure. Originally, it was lost in a lower world, so it was impossible to peer into its location. It would have been extremely difficult to search for it. You've done the heavenly palace of Bishing a great service by bringing the tower here. Tell me, what do you want? Said the First Majesty. She slowly raised her slender hand, and with a casual gesture, the Anata tower in Jian Chen's hand landed on hers. Jian Chen was unable to stop the Anata tower's departure at all. May I ask what I can exchange the merit for? Jian Chen asked. Xueqi held the Anata tower in her hand and studied it carefully. It was like she was looking at the sword slashes on there. She said leisurely, various peak cultivation methods, ancient secret techniques, heavenly resources, and cultivation resources. As long as you can mention it, our heavenly palace of Bishing will be able to give it to you. If you want to, you can even use some of your merit to join our heavenly palace of Bishing, or even move your clan to the Prosper Plane to be placed under our protection. It had to be mentioned that the conditions Xueqi offered were extremely tempting. The last condition she offered was even enough to drive a few peak organizations insane. So many peak experts did everything that they could to find the Anata Tower on the desolate plain, because they wanted to return the Anata Tower to the heavenly palace of Bishing, and use the merit of their service to benefit their clans. Conflict was omnipresent in the saints' world. Everlasting empires were not truly everlasting, while peak clans could also face destruction. Even grand primes could die. Only by joining one of the greatest organizations in the saints' world and receiving their protection would they be able to ensure that their clan would continue to exist, without any worries about other enemies. This was why all the peak experts fought over the Anata Tower. I want the First Majesty to kill someone for me, Jian Chen said with killing intent. Kill someone? Xueqi was surprised. That's right, a grand prime. Jian Chen slid his finger through the air, and a strand of sword chi shot out. He used it to depict the Elder of Mountains and Seas. He wanted to avenge Kai Ye, but the Elder of Mountains and Seas was so powerful that even if he fused the twin swords, he was not completely confident about killing the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Moreover, he would end up exposing himself. As a result, it would be best if he did not expose the twin swords. The safest method was to ask the First Majesty to take action. With the First Majesty's strength, killing the Elder of Mountains and Seas was a piece of cake. Chapter 2431. Meeting Su Ran again. Xueqi glanced past the Elder of Mountains and Seas casually. Although there were not a lot of grand primes in the saints' world, they were not necessarily few in number either. The Elder of Mountains and Seas' strength clearly was not enough to catch Xueqi's attention. As a result, she did not know who the Elder of Mountains and Seas was. However, she would not take personal action and kill someone for Jian Chen either. She declined without any hesitation. I won't kill anyone for you. Although you've done us a great service by bringing back Master's treasure, don't even think about using that to turn our heavenly palace of Bishing into your butchering knife. Change your condition. The First Majesty was very clear. Without a doubt, Jian Chen had committed a great service by bringing back the Anata Tower, but he could only get some cultivation resources or the heavenly palace of Bishing's protection in exchange. He definitely could not turn the heavenly palace of Bishing into his weapon to kill or target people for him. Jian Chen could obviously tell what the First Majesty was trying to say. He knew inviting an expert from the heavenly palace of Bishing to kill someone for him was not possible, so he no longer dwelled on the matter. He continued, there's a grand prime who can find me through his innate ability. I want to use some of my merit to exchange for a method to avoid being found through these innate abilities. All right. The heaven-splitting ancestor may lay his hands on me. I hope the heavenly palace of Bishing can stop the heaven-splitting ancestor if he comes for me. No problem. The heaven-splitting ancestor will no longer eye you in the future. I want some cultivation methods, battle skills, and ancient secret techniques, along with some cultivation resources. Sure. Bishing will transport you to the Legacy Hall in a while. Feel free to choose whatever you want from the first and second levels. We will deduct everything from your merit according to the level of the cultivation methods and their preciousness. I want something that can kill grand primes. Do you think you can find treasures that can kill grand primes wherever you look? You can only choose items from the first and second levels of the Legacy Hall, Xueqi said coldly. Very soon, Jian Chen and Xueqi agreed on the terms, and he was sent to the Legacy Hall by the artifact spirit. Jian Chen did not know how many levels there were to the Legacy Hall, but he could only move through the bottom two. The first level held various cultivation methods, battle skills, and secret techniques. The second level held some formations and god artifacts. Jian Chen picked over 100 cultivation methods, battle skills, and secret techniques from the first floor. They ranged in quality. The only regret was that the best cultivation methods on the first floor only reached peak chaotic prime. These cultivation methods and secret techniques were useless to him because he cultivated the chaotic body. As a result, he asked the divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bishing to personally deliver these items and some cultivation resources to the Tian Yuan clan on the Cloud Plain. He had prepared these items for the Tian Yuan clan. The Tian Yuan clan had only been founded recently. Their heritage was simply too thin. The resources from the heavenly palace of Bisheng could allow the Tian Yuan clan to strengthen faster. Afterwards, he arrived on the second level of the Legacy Hall. He moved through the various formation discs and chose carefully. 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation. Jian Chen stopped before a set of formation banners. He looked at their explanation, and his eyes gradually lit up. The banners could create a powerful formation that used invisible flames to incinerate the soul. It attacked the souls of enemies such that they would not be able to guard against it. It could trap experts below the 7th heavenly layer of chaotic prime within them and slowly kill them off. It can actually kill experts below the 7th heavenly layer of chaotic prime. Jian Chen was immediately interested as killing intent radiated from his body. This set of formation banners might be of some use in avenging Kai Ye. At the same time, it was the strongest set of formation banners he had seen on the second level so far, so he stowed them away without any hesitation at all. However, he only found a single set of formation banners as powerful as the 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation. He felt that this was a pity. Jian Chen only took a single item from the second level of the Legacy Hall. He was still selling god artifacts, so he obviously did not need to waste his merit on items like that. The Tian Yuan clan temporarily did not need god artifacts either. Several hours later, Jian Chen left the Legacy Hall and returned to the Majestic Hall. Of course, the Anata Tower was a peak god artifact after all. Even if Jian Chen exchanged for everything he had collected so far, he would only use up half of his merit from returning the Anata Tower. I'll save up the remaining half of the merit for now. I'll come back to exchange it when I need something in the future, Jian Chen said to the First Majesty after a moment of thought. Originally, he wanted to ask the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng to protect his sister, Changyang Mingyue, until she recovered her strength. However, as soon as he thought about the information he learned from Shui Yunlan, how her sister had established grievances with the First Majesty in the past, he could only give up on it. In the past, the First Majesty had been suppressed by his sister, Changyang Mingyue. Although he did not know if the First Majesty held grudges, he definitely would not risk his sister's life. Before long, Jian Chen emerged from the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. The Anata Tower was no longer with him, but he did gain a simple, jade pendant. It was engraved with the pattern of ways. The pendant came from the First Majesty. It could prevent innate abilities such as the Elder of Mountains and Seas ability from finding him. Moreover, a large quantity of cultivation resources was now in his space ring as well. He did not ask the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng to protect the Tian Yuan clan. He knew about his identity, so he did not wish for the Tian Yuan clan and the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng to have ties that ran too deep. One day in the future, he might take the Tian Yuan clan and leave the Saints' world. If the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng protected the Tian Yuan clan, it might complicate matters. Jian Chen, I've waited a very long time here for you. You finally arrived on the Prosper Plain. At this moment, an old voice rang out from in front of him. Jian Chen looked up and saw someone familiar standing before him. She was an old woman. She wore coarse clothes and seemed rather hunchbacked. Her grizzled hair ran down her back messily. Even though she seemed very old, where her face was filled with wrinkles, her eyes were extremely bright. They were brimming with energy as if they possessed the vast power of the world. The old woman was Su Ran, the person he had separated with on planet Tianming. Jian Chen studied Su Ran, and a gleam of light immediately flashed through his eyes. He clasped his fist and said, "Congratulations on recovering and becoming a chaotic prime again. I was only able to recover my cultivation, return to my peak condition, and even improve from there because of your origin of ways," Su Ran said calmly. She stared straight at Jian Chen. Her gaze seemed deep as if she could see through him completely. "Jian Chen, I can sense killing intent, very strong killing intent, within you," Su Ran continued. "Kai Ye is dead." Jian Chen was grief-stricken. Su Ran had already adapted to the concept of life and death long ago. Her face did not change much at all. She only sighed gently and said, "I am unable to repay you for the origin of ways. If you want revenge, I can help you." Chapter 2432. The Myriad Bone Guild. Jian Chen did not lighten up at all when Su Ran offered to help. He shook his head gently and said, "The person who killed Kai Ye was a Grand Prime." "A Grand Prime." As expected, Su Ran frowned. Although she had recovered her cultivation and even progressed compared to the past, she was still a chaotic prime. A huge difference still existed between her and a grand prime. After a while of thought, Su Ran told Jian Chen, "The Anata Tower's value is immeasurable. Your merit from returning the Anata Tower should be enough to exchange for some formations that can deal with grand primes. Although they might not be able to kill grand primes, as long as they keep the grand prime busy, I might be able to kill them. Of course, that's only if the grand prime isn't too powerful. I could only go to the first and second levels of the Legacy Hall within the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. I only took a 9 Tribulations Incineration formation that can kill 7th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Primes and below," said Jian Chen. Su Ran's eyes lit up when she heard that. "You actually exchanged a 9 Tribulations Incineration formation. If you have that formation, I am confident about heavily injuring a grand prime that's not too powerful." Su Ran explained when she saw Jian Chen's surprise, "Don't underestimate the 9 Tribulations Incineration formation. Indeed, the 9 Tribulations Incineration formation can only kill 7th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Primes. But it's no ordinary formation. It's a wondrous killing formation that specially targets the soul. Even some grand primes will be affected once they become trapped in it. Although the 9 Tribulations Incineration formation can't injure grand primes, as long as it affects them, I'll be able to harm them from outside." "Only harm and not kill?" Jian Chen asked. "Jian Chen, don't underestimate any grand prime. With my current level of cultivation and the formation, injuring a grand prime is already extremely impressive. Killing one is basically impossible." Su Rang paused for a split second there before she added, "Of course, it's not impossible for you to kill a grand prime." "How so?" Jian Chen immediately asked. "You can seek help from outsiders." Su Ran looked at Jian Chen deeply and said, "There has always been a saying among the people. Anything can happen with money. This saying is also prevalent in the saints' world. As a result, as long as you're rich enough, you can ask an expert from the Myriad Bone Guild to take action." "The Myriad Bone Guild?" Jian Chen was confused. He had never heard of this organization before. The Myriad Bone Guild is the most powerful assassination organization in the saints' world. They have many assassins, ranging from the Origin Realm to Grand Prime. As long as you're willing to pay the price, you can even get their Grand Primes to kill people for you, said Su Ran. Jian Chen's eyes lit up and asked, "What's the price to ask the experts of the Myriad Bone Guild to kill a Grand Prime for me?" "In terms of 5-colored divine crystals, a first heavenly layer Grand Prime costs 1,000,000 of them. The stronger they are, the more it'll cost." Jian Chen gasped. 1,000,000 5-colored divine crystals was an astronomical figure to him. After all, he had only managed to sell a low-quality god artifact on the spatial battleship from the Jade Fluid Plane for several thousand 5-colored divine crystals. Jian Chen could not even consider 1,000,000 of them. Even weaker Grand Primes would not be able to take out such a sum. Colored divine crystals were simply too precious. They were condensed from the presence of ways, so they possessed the power of ways. Usually, they only formed in outer space, making them a truly wondrous item created by the world. They were not like the regular divine crystals that could be harvested en masse through mines. Although there were many 5-colored divine crystals among the resources he had taken from the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng, it was nowhere near 1,000,000. Moreover, even if he did gather 1,000,000 5-colored divine crystals, he would only be able to kill a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. Although he had no idea how many heavenly layers the Elder of Mountains and Seas was at, he was certain that it was not just the first. However, we have the 9 Tribulations Incineration formation now, so there's no need for us to ask the Myriad Bone Guild to kill a Grand Prime. We only need to ask for a full-strength attack from an expert of the Myriad Bone Guild to injure the person you want to kill. I'll handle the rest. Jian Chen, how many 5-colored divine crystals do you have on you? Su Ran asked. Around 100,000, said Jian Chen. He had exchanged this sum from the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. Originally, he planned to save these up for his sister. 100,000? That's enough. Let's go. I'll take you to the Myriad Bone Guild. They happen to have a branch on the Prosper Plain. The branch was located in a bustling city within the central region of the Prosper Plain. When Jian Chen saw the Myriad Bone Guild, he found that it was like what its name suggested. It was a small building completely constructed from white bone. The building was only 3 stories tall, and it sat in an extremely remote alleyway that barely anyone would walk past. It added a sense of gloominess to the building of bones. Jian Chen followed Su Ran into the branch. The building was dark inside, and the powers for great formations operated there. Not only did it cut off all senses of the soul, but even vision would be greatly affected. At this moment, darkness descended. The entire building immediately lost all of its light and became pitch black. Jian Chen immediately felt like he had lost all his senses. He could not even see anything with his eyes. Jian Chen knew that this was caused by the powers of the formations here. Who do you want to kill? What is their cultivation? A child who only seemed to be 8 or 9 years old appeared before Jian Chen within the darkness. He shone with a mysterious light, preventing the darkness there from swallowing him. As a result, he stood out. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed as soon as he saw the child, as the child did not give off any energy at all. He just seemed like an ordinary kid. The child felt like a ball of mist, difficult for Jian Chen to see through and understand. We want the Myriad Bone Guild to send a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. We only need a single full-powered strike from them. Su Ran's voice rang out from the darkness, but Jian Chen was unable to sense her at all. The power of the formations within the Myriad Bone Guild obscured all his senses. All he could see was the child right now. A full-powered strike, which is a single attack. 80,000 5-colored divine crystals, the child said emotionlessly. Afterwards, Jian Chen handed over 80,000 5-colored divine crystals, and the child passed him a jade talisman. He said, when you need the Myriad Bone Guild to take action, just activate the jade glyph. Remember, there will only be an attack on the level of a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. When we activate the talisman, will your person arrive on time? Su Ran frowned. The process seemed slightly different than rumored. You do not need to worry about that, said the child coldly before vanishing. The darkness in the building vanished, and everything returned to normal. Jian Chen and Su Ran looked at each other before looking at the jade talisman and then the empty Myriad Bone Guild. They said nothing and just left. After the two of them departed, the child appeared silently. He stood in the Myriad Bone Guild as he looked at Jian Chen with a deep, piercing gaze. It was also at this moment that a gray-robed old man hurried down from upstairs. Several people followed behind him. These people were all the members who watched over and managed this branch. The old man took his people and arrived behind the child in a hurry. He bowed towards the child politely and asked fearfully, Sir, why have you come personally? Chapter 2433. The Protector Swords appear. I've come to see Jian Chen. I want to check out just how different this person is, said the child without even looking back. He was extremely indifferent. Jian Chen. The old man behind the child was puzzled. The young man earlier was the person who stirred up the saint's world with the Anatta Tower, Jian Chen. The child's gaze became extremely deep, and he continued, the heavenly palace of Bishing actually learnt about the Anatta Tower's appearance long ago. Logically speaking, they should have retrieved it as quickly as they could, but they turned a blind eye to its appearance, allowing the experts of the saint's world to fight over it. Originally, I was extremely puzzled by this. I wondered what the heavenly palace of Bishing was planning. However, I finally understand it now. The heavenly palace of Bishing allowed Jian Chen to hold on to the Anatta Tower because the Anatta Grand Exalt had allowed it. What? The Anatta Grand Exalt? The old man behind the child was immediately startled when he heard that. In disbelief he asked, the Anatta Grand Exalt? Didn't he die over 3 million years ago? I only learnt about this recently from that Azure Pong. A 9th Majesty had appeared from the heavenly palace of Bishing. Since there's a 9th Majesty, it means that the Anatta Grand Exalt is still alive, as all people who take up the title of Majesty in the heavenly palace of Bishing are the Anatta Grand Exalt's disciples. Only the old man could hear the child's words. The people that stood behind the old man heard nothing at all. The old man took in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. He said, I understand. Jian Chen probably has some sort of connection to the Anatta Grand Exalt, so our Myriad Bone Guild will do our best to be on good terms with him. On good terms, is it? The child crossed his arms and gradually smiled. However, the smile just seemed frightening. It was chilling. On the desolate plain, within the Tower of Radiance, all the mist that permeated the place had dispersed. As a result, the miniature world within the Tower of Radiance had become the safest place in the Radiant Saint Hall. In the Radiant Saint Hall, There were actually many Radiant God Kings who could break through to the level equivalent to Lake God King. However, due to the threat of the mysterious expert, they never dared to take that step. Now that the Tower of Radiance had become the greatest sanctuary of the Radiant Saint Hall, all of these Radiant God Kings broke through and formally condensed their late seven-colored soul core. As a result, many Radiant God Kings gathered within the Tower of Radiance. They were scattered everywhere, cultivating alone and comprehending the laws of the Hallowed. They decided to remain here until they condensed a soul tree, which was equivalent to the primordial realm. Only then would they leave. Xianming had returned to the Radiant Saint Hall recently, so he was also in the Tower of Radiance. Due to Xianming's father being one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall, he was one of the people with the greatest status in the Tower of Radiance. There would always be some Radiant God Kings around him such that it seemed like people would gather towards him. I never actually thought that Brother Jian Chen would actually be a part of the martial soul lineage. Xianming sighed emotionally. He had learnt many things about Jian Chen from the Radiant God Kings. Xianming, you are actually working with a member of the martial soul lineage. Do you know your crimes? This moment, the gateway to the miniature world suddenly opened. Gong Sunji walked out. There was a sliver of arrogance on his face. He stared at Xianming coldly as if he was judging a criminal. Over 30 Radiant God Kings followed behind Gong Sunji. They were all lords of main peaks in the Radiant Saint Hall. Some of them even wielded god artifacts. However, the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak, Donglin Xueqi, was not among them. Gong Sunji used his identity as the descendant of the Grand Exalt to take the miniature world for himself. As a result, it became his personal territory. Only the people who followed him could cultivate in the miniature world. Donglin Xueqi was unwilling to yield to Gong Sunji, so she left the miniature world and cultivated outside. Xianming obviously knew about Gong Sunji's new identity, but he did not fear Gong Sunji at all. His face immediately sank, and he said coldly, Gong Sunji, do you think you're the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall? Whether I'm guilty or not is not up to you to decide. Not only did Jian Chen steal the Grand Exalt's cultivation method from our Radiant Saint Hall, but he's also a part of the martial soul lineage. He's our mortal enemy, so all those people who have ties with Jian Chen should be executed. Bring me Xianming. Gong Sunji said coldly. The peak lords behind Gong Sunji all hesitated, but very soon, 8 of them made up their minds and charged towards Xianming at the same time. 3 of them even used god artifacts. Sure, Xianming's father was a vice leader, but Gong Sunji was the descendant of the Grand Exalt. Even the leader's treatment towards Gong Sunji had changed evidently, so they believed that Gong Sunji's current status was even greater than Xianming's father. Gong Sunji, stop! The expressions of the Radiant God Kings around Xianming all changed drastically. Xianming's face was sunken. Cold light flickered in his eyes. He was fearless. Laws of the Hallowed condensed around him. He was clearly ready to fight. However, at this moment, the world within the Tower of Radiance suddenly began to shake violently. The earth tossed as the entire world trembled. It seemed like the end of the world. 9 sword-shaped mountains suddenly appeared high in the sky, standing there like swords. They shone with blinding light, making them seem like 9 suns from afar. This alarmed all the Radiant God Kings within the Tower of Radiance, and Xianming and Gong Sunji's argument ended just like that. Everyone raised their heads and stared at the 9 mountains in the sky. They had no idea what was happening. Look, it seems like there's a sword planted in each of the 9 mountains. There really is a sword. Their god artifact at the very least. What terrifying pressure. The 9 swords must be of great quality. The Radiant God Kings cried out in the Tower of Radiance as discussions sprang up everywhere. At this moment, a thunderous voice boomed out, echoing through every corner in the Tower of Radiance. Master had 9 retainers in the past. They were all extremely powerful and went to war with Master. They all committed services of great merit. After Master passed away, his 9 retainers did not choose to live on either. Instead, they used their innate secret techniques to condense their vital energies, using their bodies and powers to condense 9 swords, which were sealed here. They became the Protector Swords, which would be used by the next Master of the Tower of Radiance to conquer the world. With the 9 swords, you will possess power equivalent to the 9 retainers. The voice came from the artifact spirit. The breathing of all the Radiant God Kings in the Tower of Radiance became ragged when they heard that. They looked at the 9 protector swords greedily as their blood surged. Gong Sun-ji's body trembled from excitement. The most powerful 9 retainers under the master of the Tower of Radiance. As long as someone wielded a protector sword, they would possess the power of a retainer. Just how tempting of a thing was that? Chapter 2434. The authority to distribute. Sir Artifact Spirit has suddenly told us about these 9 swords. What is the meaning of this? Are you stupid? Can't you tell? Sir Artifact Spirit clearly wants to find masters for these 9 swords. These 9 swords came from the 9 retainers under the master of the Tower of Radiance in the past. The swords contain the power of the 9 retainers. Doesn't that mean whoever wields them, even if they're only a Radiant God King, will be able to reach the level of peak experts immediately and stand at the level of the leader? Heavens! To go from a Radiant God King to a peak expert. That is literally a chance to rise up. The Radiant God Kings were all in high spirits as they discussed the matter fervently. All of them were interested. Gong Sun-ji no longer paid any attention to Xian Ming. His face became bright red as his breathing became extremely ragged. He raised his head and bellowed out, "Artifact Spirit, your master is my ancestor. I'm his only living descendant now, so I'm the only choice for inheriting the Tower of Radiance and becoming the Tower of Radiance's master. I want you to give all 9 swords to me. I must be the one who chooses who gets the swords." Gong Sun-ji's heart beat heavily. At that moment, he felt excitement at a level he had never experienced before. Once he obtained the authority to distribute the swords, the strongest protector sword would definitely go to him. Once I wield the greatest protector sword, the 8 other people will have to follow me, and they'll be under my command. How many people in the Saints' world would still dare to provoke me, Gong Sun-ji? And what will the leader become before me? As soon as he imagined such a glorious scene, Gong Sun-ji became extremely eager. As soon as Gong Sun-ji mentioned how he wanted to distribute the protector swords, the hearts of all the Radiant God Kings in the surroundings turned cold. As if they had been doused in cold water, the greed in many of them was put out. After all, Gong Sun-ji was the descendant of the master of the Tower of Radiance. In everyone's eyes, Gong Sun-ji definitely had the greatest authority in the Tower of Radiance. He was the person who had the greatest influence over the Artifact Spirit. If he ordered the Artifact Spirit as the descendant of the Grand Exalt, the Artifact Spirit might actually have to listen to him. After all, the miniature world that held the Grand Exalt's legacy was the best evidence of this. Donglin Qiushui's face darkened. She had refused to listen to Gong Sun-ji, so her relationship with him had already taken a bad turn. If Gong Sun-ji gained the authority to distribute the 9 swords, she definitely would not obtain one. Compared to Donglin Qiushui's dejection, the eyes of the Radiant God Kings who had decided to follow Gong Sun-ji all became ablaze. They all swore from behind Gong Sun-ji that he would be their leader in the future. Clearly, these people all believed that Gong Sun-ji would obtain the authority to distribute the 9 protector swords, which was why they wanted to be in Gong Sun-ji's good graces. They only hoped that Gong Sun-ji would bestow a protector sword on them so that they could become a peak expert in a split second. At the same time, 9 figures flew over from the entrance of the Tower of Radiance. Their presences were mighty, and they were wrapped up in the laws of the Hallowed. They were extremely powerful. These 9 people were the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, and the 8 vice leaders. Not only did the Artifact Spirit's voice boom through the Tower of Radiance, it also informed the people in charge of the Radiant Saint Hall about the 9 protector swords. I never thought there were such powerful swords hidden within the Tower of Radiance. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall stared deeply at the 9 mountains in the distance. There had never been any records regarding the existence of the 9 protector swords. These 9 protector swords really are very powerful. Just the presence they give off gives me chills. The 9 retainers were 6th heavenly layer Grand Primes at the very least in the past. Perhaps they were even more powerful, said a vice leader behind the leader sternly. His eyes also blazed with interest. The power of the 9 protector swords had greatly surpassed them. They had far surpassed the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall. Everyone has the opportunity to become a wielder of a protector sword. The protector swords exist for the master of the Tower of Radiance, so whoever inherits a protector sword must serve the master of the Tower of Radiance and fight for them. Now, immediately gather all hallowed saint masters, regardless of strength or talent. As long as they have comprehended the laws of the hallowed, bring them here. the artifact spirit's voice rang out through the entire world. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall frowned. He could not help but become interested as well when he heard that everyone had the opportunity to obtain a protector sword. However, what he refused to accept was that all the people who wielded a sword would have to serve the master of the Tower of Radiance. After all, he was a peak expert on par with Grand Primes. He had his pride. It would be difficult for him to serve someone after holding a position of dominance for so long. He would not object to this if the master of the Tower of Radiance was a supreme expert or a grand exalt. However, based on the current situation, Gong Sun Ji might end up as the next master of the Tower of Radiance. He, the mighty leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, supposed to listen to Gong Sun Ji's commands? Aside from Xian Zhan, who hesitated as well, the other 7 vice leaders were all eager. No, you're not allowed to do this. Artifact Spirit, you have to give me the authority to distribute the 9 protector swords. I order you as the descendant of your master. I must be the one who distributes the protector swords. Gong Sun Ji became flustered. What the 9 protector swords protected was the second master of the Tower of Radiance. Although he was the Grand Exalt's descendant, he still had not become the master of the Tower of Radiance, so he needed to have absolute control over the 9 protector swords one way or another. However, the artifact spirit completely ignored his cries. After all, the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance was the artifact spirit who had come up from the lower world with Jian Chen. All the protective formations of the Radiant Saint Hall had been activated outside the Tower of Radiance. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, had passed on this information to all the elders as quickly as he could, ordering all the elders to gather the hallowed Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall and send them to the Tower of Radiance. Yu Chen did not hide the news of the protector swords, so all the Radiant God Kings within the Tower of Radiance learned about it. There was the artifact spirit there as well, so even if he wanted to hide it, he could not. As a result, he directly announced the news of the protector swords in the Radiant Saint Hall. Although their appearance might threaten his grasp over the Radiant Saint Hall, the Radiant Saint Hall would also strengthen with their appearance, becoming the greatest organization on the desolate plain. He could only follow the flow with this. The Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xian, sat on the top of his mountain. He gazed at the clouds in the distance blankly. He seemed lonely, sorrowful, and bleak. He was originally a member of the Han family. Although his status in the clan was nothing special, it was still his origins. However, since his newly accepted disciple, Chong Yang, was a member of the martial soul lineage, the patriarch of the Han family had cut him off without any mercy at all, reducing him to a loner. This was all because if the Han family wanted to retain their relationship with the Radiant Saint Hall, they could not afford to keep Han Xian. Chapter 2435. Endless harassment. However, the matter did not end there. After he was exposed as Jian Chen, Han Xian was greatly affected as well. His status in the Radiant Saint Hall plummeted daily. Many of the Radiant God Kings he had been on good terms with avoided him. They stayed as far away from him as possible like he was a god of the plague. Sometimes, Radiant God Kings that had disagreements with Han Xian in the past would even come to the Soaring Clouds Peak to provoke him. They would make scornful remarks, showing no respect to Han Xian at all. This was because in many people's eyes, Han Xian had already become a criminal of the Radiant Saint Hall. Accepting a member of the martial soul lineage was a crime punishable by death in the Radiant Saint Hall. Even though Han Xian had been completely clueless, he would not be able to avoid punishment. However, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall never got around to dealing with the matter, which was why Han Xian was still the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak. However, everyone believed that Han Xian's day of judgment would be soon. At this moment, a powerful senses of the soul swept over and passed on the same message to all the Radiant God Kings in the region. Han Xian's eyes lit up slightly before becoming gloomy again very soon. He murmured, "Protector swords? What does that have to do with me?" Han Xian immediately lost interest. He knew it was impossible for him to gain the recognition of a protector sword. However, after hesitating slightly, he said, "Bai Yu, come immediately." Before long, the white-robed Bai Yu arrived at the top of the mountain with radiant saint force. She stood behind Han Xian and bowed. "Greetings to teacher." Bai Yu was just as pretty as before. Her white robes wrapped around her body, perfectly depicting her beautiful figure. Her long, black hair was blown around by the wind on the mountain peak, making her seem extremely elegant. The only problem was that her face seemed slightly worried, making her seem much more haggard than before. The Soaring Clouds Peak status in the Radiant Saint Hall had plummeted because of Jian Chen. Bai Yu was also affected, so it had not been easy for her either. Out of the 3 past disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak, only she remained. Bai Yu, I've just received a message from the elders that 9 protector swords have appeared in the Tower of Radiance. Those who obtain one will reach the level of peak experts. You can go try it, said Han Xian. Sir, my talent is unimpressive. I probably have no right to obtain a protector sword, said Bai Yu calmly. She did not lighten up at all. Bai Yu, don't underestimate yourself. There aren't a lot of people who become hallowed saint masters with just a 2-colored soul core. Bai Yu sighed gently when she heard that. She was gloomy. Only she understood that her talent was not impressive. She could only become a hallowed saint master so soon because of her second senior brother. She had comprehended the laws of the hallowed from her second senior brother and became a glorious hallowed saint master. However, ever since her second senior brother left, her progress had become insignificant compared to the past when she had her second senior brother's help. As a matter of fact, it could be described as no progress at all. Go. You're the pride of my Soaring Clouds Peak. If you obtain a protector sword, our status will rise. We won't have to worry about being harassed by others anymore, Han Xian encouraged. Yes, sir. Bai Yu could only agree reluctantly when she saw Han Xian's haggard face, even though she might disappoint him. She did not even consider the 9 swords because she knew it was impossible for her. The Donglin clan was one of the peak organizations on the Desolate Plain as well, but they were truly the weakest. This was because the ancestor of the Donglin clan, Donglin Su, was a Grand Prime who had only broken through recently. He was only a first heavenly layer Grand Prime right now. However, even with that being the case, the Donglin clan still held some power on the Desolate Plain. Currently, Donglin Yanxue sat within a pavilion in a garden inside the Donglin clan. A zither was placed on the stone table before her as she played it. Back then, when Jian Chen's identity had been exposed, the ancestor of the Donglin clan, Donglin Su, had fetched Donglin Yanxue from the Radiant Saint Hall. She had not returned to the Radiant Saint Hall since then. As there had never been a formal judgment, and the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall had never formally revoked her identity as chosen saint, she was still the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked over. He looked at Donglin Yanxue gently and said, Yanxue, your master just sent a message to me. She said that there's a huge fortuitous encounter in the Radiant Saint Hall, and she wants you to come immediately. The middle-aged man was Donglin Yanxue's father, the current patriarch, Donglin Xiong. Donglin Yanxue stopped playing the zither. She seemed slightly doubtful and asked, A fortuitous encounter? Father, tell me what it is exactly. I don't know the exact details either, but your master, Mu Shuai, would never harm you. It's best if you go. The clan stands behind you, so the Radiant Saint Hall won't do anything to you, said Donglin Xiong. With that, Donglin Yanxue stood up. She stowed the zither away and slowly made her way out of the pavilion. When she passed by Donglin Xiong, she paused slightly and asked after a slight hesitance. Father, I acted alone and helped Jian Chen escape, offending the Radiant Saint Hall, so why hasn't the clan placed any blame on me at all? Donglin Xiong chuckled and said, Protecting you was the ancestor's intentions. The ancestor is not short-sighted like others. He could tell from long ago that Jian Chen was someone extraordinary. You can only befriend people like that, not offend. As a result, the ancestor did not blame you at all when you assisted Jian Chen's escape. Instead, he praised you. That is because you've shown kindness to Jian Chen. If Jian Chen matures in the future, he will definitely return the favor many-fold. Many Radiant Saint Masters had already gathered outside the Tower of Radiance now. These Radiant Saint Masters possessed various cultivation level, but without any exception, all of them had comprehended the laws of the Hallowed. At this moment, they all stared at the Tower of Radiance excitedly, studying it carefully. Isn't that Bai Yu of the Soaring Clouds Peak? You actually have the face to show yourself here? A surprised and scornful voice suddenly rang out. A young man pointed at Bai Yu and sneered. Bai Yu stood in the crowd. She gritted her teeth silently as her eyes flowed with unyielding light. She had heard these remarks many times in the past years. She had cried. She had grieved. She had been in pain. She had been in despair. As a result, she had already adapted to it. What? By you? Do you think you can become the master of a protector sword? Do you think you have the ability? By you, you had ties with a member of the martial soul lineage. Do you think Sir Artifact Spirit will let you inherit a protector sword? Ha ha ha, by you, you actually have the courage to enter the Tower of Radiance. Jian Chen of the martial soul lineage stole the supreme legacy of our Radiant Saint Hall under Sir Artifact Spirit's watch, and you're related to Jian Chen. Do you think Sir Artifact Spirit will just kill you off out of anger once you enter the Tower of Radiance? Now that you mention it, that really does seem to make sense. Everyone, do you think Sir Artifact Spirit will kill Bai Yu as soon as she sets foot in the Tower of Radiance? Many hallowed saint masters in the surroundings sneered. Bai Yu had already paled. She clenched her fists tightly and silently endured the scorn and sneers from around her. She said nothing. Chapter 2436. You're Bai Yu? At this moment, a group of elders approached the Tower of Radiance as well. Their arrival immediately made the surroundings fall quiet. Even the hallowed saint masters who scoffed at Bai Yu shut up. Bai Yu saw her former master, Mu Xueqi, with a single glance. In the past, when Bai Yu was just a nameless disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak, it was Mu Xueqi who came to the Soaring Clouds Peak to accept her as a disciple. Mu Xueqi had taken her into the Sacred Hall, which made Bai Yu's status rise up. She became an elder's disciple, a position that all people envied. However, it was also Mu Xueqi who expelled her, severing their ties as master and disciple. Bai Yu had basically fallen from heaven to hell in a single moment. As she looked at Mu Xueqi's familiar face, mixed feelings appeared in Bai Yu's eyes. After a moment of hesitation, she made her way through the crowd and arrived before Mu Xueqi. She bowed and said, "Master." Bai Yu's action caused all the elders to cast their gazes over, but all of their eyes were cold. Mu Xueqi's eyes were cold as well. She stared at Bai Yu emotionlessly and said, "Bai Yu, it's actually inappropriate for you to be here. And I stopped being your master many years ago. You should call me elder." Bai Yu's heart turned cold when she heard Mu Xueqi's icy words. Her eyes reddened and teared up. She could endure the sneers and scoffs from the hallowed saint masters around her, but she was unable to ignore the words of her former master. Mu Xueqi's coldness and emotionlessness stabbed at her heart like a needle. It caused piercing pain. "Look, Donglin Yanxue has actually come as well." "What? Donglin Yanxue? That traitor who helped the martial soul lineage? She actually has the face to return." At this moment, a soft discussion started. The crowd surged. The white-robed Donglin Yanxue, who possessed otherworldly beauty, slowly walked through the crowd. Wherever she passed by, the surrounding hallowed saint masters would step aside and automatically form a path. Donglin Yanxue could obviously hear the discussions in the surroundings, but she did not care at all. She seemed composed. In the end, she arrived before Mu Xueqi and bowed towards her. She said softly, "Master." "Yanxue, you've come." Mu Xueqi smiled faintly as she faced Donglin Yanxue. Donglin Yanxue had also helped Jian Chen in the past. As a matter of fact, her crimes were far more severe than Bai Yu's. However, Mu Xueqi treated Donglin Yanxue completely differently. "You have to do your best and try to obtain a protector sword this time. Once you gain the recognition of the protector sword, no one else will dare to speak badly about you in the Radiant Saint Hall in the future," Mu Xueqi said gently. Donglin Yanxue's eyes lit up, and she nodded gently. The protector swords. Bai Yu clenched her fists tightly to another side. Originally, she felt nothing towards the protector swords. However, she had already grown tired of the harassment and abuse from her seniors in the past few years. As soon as she heard about what the protector swords could do, she became interested as well. "Although it's almost impossible for me to obtain a protector sword with my talent, I must do my best," Bai Yu swore inside. Before long, the leader and 8 vice leaders emerged from the Tower of Radiance simultaneously. They worked together to unlock the Grand Exalt's formation around the Tower of Radiance before sending in all the hallowed saint masters. Opening the Grand Exalt's formation required 2 vice leaders at the very least, and they could not keep it open for too long. Since there were far too many hallowed saint masters this time, the Grand Exalt's formation needed to remain open for a long period of time, so they needed the leader and the 8 vice leaders to work together. All the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there charged into the Tower of Radiance as quickly as they could once the Grand Exalt's formation was opened. They constantly flickered, and the hallowed Saint Masters still outside rapidly decreased. Finally, all the hallowed Saint Masters had entered the Tower of Radiance after several hours. Even the elders did not remain. The crowded hall had now become empty. "Let's go in as well. Let's see just who will gain the recognition of the Protector Swords," said the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall before disappearing with the vice leaders. They also entered the Tower of Radiance. All the hallowed Saint Masters had already gathered together in the Tower of Radiance. There were several 100,000 of them. The Radiant Saint Hall possessed over 1,000,000 disciples, but not every single one of them had comprehended the laws of the hallowed. As a result, basically all the hallowed Saint Masters had gathered there now. After all, the Protector Swords represented a chance to rise up. Everyone was interested. There were definitely not a lot of outliers like Han Xian. All the hallowed Saint Masters sat on the ground as they looked curiously at the 9 mountains that hovered in the sky. Their eyes were filled with burning interest. Those who wield the 9 swords shall serve the Master of the Tower of Radiance, and they will only fight for the Master. The artifact spirit's voice echoed through the surroundings like booming thunder. The artifact spirit repeated the origins of the Protector Swords. After a stern warning, he said, "If there is anyone unwilling, you can leave now. Otherwise, once you wield a Protector Sword and refuse to abide by Master's orders, you will die from the backlash of the Protector Swords." Yu Chen, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, sighed gently when he heard that. With a single movement he departed. Clearly, he did not plan on competing for the Protector Swords. Xian Zhan hesitated for a while as well before making up his mind and following Yu Chen out. He left this place. Burning interest filled the eyes of the 7 remaining vice leaders. Clearly, they wanted to take a Protector Sword for themselves. I wonder how the Protector Swords can be obtained? Donglin Yanxue stared at the swords that stood on the 9 mountains and wondered to herself. All the hallowed Saint Masters gathered here possessed varying strength. If they were supposed to contend using their strength alone, it would clearly be unfair. Who would be able to beat the 7 vice leaders? Artifact Spirit, do you hear me? Give the 9 Protector Swords to whoever I designate, Gong Sunji snarled seriously. His face was sunken as he was extremely agitated. He discovered that the artifact spirit did not seem to take him, the descendant of the Grand Exalt, seriously at all. The 9 Protector Swords meant the power of 9 peak experts. He hoped that the people who wielded the swords would be under his control. At this moment, the 9 mountains that hovered in the sky suddenly exploded with light. The light was almost tangible, enveloping all the hallowed Saint Master seated below. Immediately, all the people shrouded by the white light lost their senses. All they could see was a white haze. They could not even expand the senses of their souls. Even the vice leaders were no exception. This was because none of them could resist the power of the 9 swords. Baiyu sat within the white, hazy light. She felt unsettled and nervous. "You're Baiyu." At this moment, a warm voice rang out. A middle-aged man had appeared before her silently. The middle-aged man wore white robes, and he seemed benevolent. His body seemed to possess a wondrous power that could settle the agitation within people and calm them down unknowingly. Chapter 2437. The Masters of the Protector Swords. As she looked at the middle-aged man who appeared before her silently, Baiyu felt like he had fused with the white light from the 9 mountains. As a result, he became the only thing that existed in this hazy white world. However, Baiyu's heart shuddered in the next moment. Aside from the middle-aged man, there was nothing else around her. As such, she could guess the middle-aged man's identity. Her heart immediately tightened and she became uneasy. "Who are you?" The middle-aged man smiled warmly, making him seem extremely friendly. "Looking at your response, you must have guessed who I am already. I am the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance." After receiving the confirmation, Baiyu immediately paled. She subconsciously staggered backwards as her heart became chilling. The artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance was a godlike existence in Baiyu's eyes. He was supreme. All the radiant god kings and elders had to lower themselves before him. They even had to refer to him politely as Sir or Senior. He was truly an indomitable existence. However, now that this supreme existence had come to meet her, Baiyu immediately thought back to the words of the radiant god kings. Surely the artifact spirit had not come to kill her because of her relationship with her senior brother. After all, not only was her senior brother a member of the martial soul lineage, the mortal enemy of the Radiant Saint Hall, he had also entered the Tower of Radiance and taken away the most important thing here, the supreme legacy. "Don't be nervous. I have no ill intentions," said the middle-aged man. He gently extended a finger, and 2 stone chairs and a stone table immediately rose up from the ground. He sat down on one of the stone chairs before pointing at the other stone chair and saying, "Let's sit and talk." If other hallowed saint masters saw how the artifact spirit had come to look for Bai Yu, and even specially prepared a stone seat for her, their mouths would definitely hang agape. This was because this treatment was something that even the descendant of the Grand Exalt, Gong Sun Ji, did not receive. In reality, even the leader and vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall had never seen the artifact spirit's appearance. They had only heard his voice before. Bai Yu hesitated as she looked at the stone chairs before her. She was rather confused about what the artifact spirit was trying to do, but she still sat down fearfully in the end. "Your second senior brother's true identity is a member of the martial soul lineage. He has tricked you for so long, so do you resent him?" asked the artifact spirit calmly. It was impossible to tell what he was feeling from his voice. After a moment of hesitation, Bai Yu made up her mind and worked up the courage to say, "I don't resent him. No matter who my second senior brother is, he will always be my best second senior brother." The artifact spirit glanced at Bai Yu deeply. He did not say anything else and suddenly vanished. In the next moment, all the hallowed saint masters gathered within the Tower of Radiance felt the ground shake violently. A stifling power suddenly filled the surroundings. At the same time, they heard the crisp, clear thrum of a sword. All the hallowed saint masters gathered there could clearly see a streak of extremely bright white light fall from the ground. It vanished with a flash. A protector sword. It's a protector sword. Someone has gained the recognition of a protector sword. Who is it? Who is this person? The hearts of all the hallowed saint masters began to thump heavily. The protector swords represented an opportunity to rise up. Since someone had obtained a protector sword, it meant that they would rise and become a peak expert no matter what their cultivation was. They would turn into a supreme figure of the Radiant Saint Hall. In the distance, the leader, Yu Chen, and the vice leader, Xian Zhan, stood with their hands behind their backs. They stared at the region enveloped by white light. "Someone has already obtained a protector sword," said the leader. His feelings were mixed. He had no idea whether he should feel joy or worry. "No matter who it is, our Radiant Saint Hall's strength will be taken to a whole new level," Xian Zhan said indifferently. The region had been enveloped by the power of the protector swords. Coupled with the artifact spirit's interference, even they were unable to see what was happening inside the white light. They had no idea who obtained the protector sword. Bai Yu only saw a flash before her eyes, and a shining sword suddenly appeared before her. The sword was 4 feet long and 2 fingers wide. It had a simple design and bore the presence of time. The power within it was so strong that it was earth-shaking. At this moment, there was another flash. Before Bai Yu could even return to her senses, her finger was cut open by the sword, and it absorbed a droplet of her blood. Afterwards, to her surprise, a mysterious mental connection was constructed between her and the sword. The 4th protector sword, Cliffgrinder's sword. Bai Yu murmured the name. She discovered that she could communicate with the sword before her at a basic level, so she immediately learnt its name. Bai Yu's eyes immediately lit up. She was overexcited to the point where she struggled to believe that this was all real. The sword before her was actually a protector sword, and it was one that ranked 4th out of the 9 protector swords, Cliffgrinder's sword. "From today onwards, you are the master of Cliffgrinder's sword." Cliffgrinder's sword was not forged from materials. Instead, it was what Cliffgrinder, the person who ranked 4th out of the 9 retainers, had transformed into. The sword is Cliffgrinder, and Cliffgrinder is the sword. However, Cliffgrinder has already turned into an artifact spirit now. You can communicate with the artifact spirit and unleash the power of Cliffgrinder's sword through him. At the same time, the voice of the Tower of Radiance's artifact spirit rang out in Bai Yu's head. "Donglin Yanxue, you assisted Jian Chen of the martial soul lineage to escape. Have you regretted your actions?" The artifact spirit appeared before Donglin Yanxue and questioned her. "I don't regret it. If I could go into the past and face the same decision as before, I would still make the same choice," Donglin Yanxue said without any hesitation at all. Jian Chen's figure had already been engraved in her heart. The artifact spirit nodded before disappearing. In the next moment, a second thrum rang out. A protector sword hovered before Donglin Yanxue with devastating power. This sword is Openfield Sword. It ranks third among the 9 swords and was left behind by Openfield of the 9 retainers in the past. Before long, a third protector sword descended and hovered before Xian Ming. A protector sword. It's actually a protector sword. I never thought that I, Xian Ming, would be fortunate enough to obtain a protector sword. Ha 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 ha, the protector sword that ranks 8th, from today onwards. I'll be relying on you to obtain a stable footing in the saints' world. You will be the greatest treasure in my life. In a short moment, 3 protector swords had descended, which made the hallowed saint master who still had not obtained a protector sword uneasy and extremely nervous. Artifact spirit, get out here. To one side, Gong Sun Ji barked aloud. Currently, his face was extremely vicious. 3 of the 9 protector swords had come down, and they all went to people not under his control. It made him furious. All the radiant god kings that followed him gathered by his side, but the 3 protector swords clearly did not come anywhere close to him. Chapter 2438. The strongest protector sword Gong Sun Ji's snarls were clearly useless. The artifact spirit directly ignored him. This was because the current artifact spirit was no longer the same as before. As a result, Gong Sun Ji's identity as the Grand Exalt's descendant meant nothing. At this moment, a 4th streak of light shot down. Another protector sword pulled itself from a mountain and shot down with blinding light. The 4th protector sword was about to be distributed. However, the protector sword did not fall within the region of white light. Instead, it shot off towards the entrance as a streak of white light. In the distance, the eyes of both Yu Chen and Xian Zhan narrowed. They could clearly see a protector sword fall towards them. It moved extremely quickly. In an instant, the 4th protector sword crossed the huge distance and hovered before Xian Zhan. It flickered with light. Xian Zhan was puzzled as he stared at the simple protector sword that contained startling power. He was confused by its intentions. Even the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, was also stunned. This was because he and Xian Zhan had already backed out from the selection of the protector sword's wielder. However, this protector sword had come to them, which surprised them greatly. This protector sword was transformed from Mindwaker, who ranked 9th among the 9 protectors. Since Mindwaker's sword has chosen you, it means that fate brings you two together. You can become the wielder of Mindwaker's sword and fight for the master of the Tower of Radiance. The artifact spirit's voice rang out in Xian Zhan's head. Xian Zhan did not become excited at all as the protector sword hovered before him. Instead, he hesitated for a short while before asking, "Is the master of the Tower of Radiance Gong Sun Ji?" "He has no right to be my master," replied the artifact spirit. With that, Xian Zhan made up his mind. "All right. Since the next master of the Tower of Radiance isn't Gong Sun Ji, I will accept the 9th protector sword and become its wielder." The 9th protector sword flashed and cut open Xian Zhan's finger with speed so terrifying that even he could not react. It absorbed some blood. Yu Chen's eyes immediately flickered with light when he saw this from beside Xian Zhan. He stared straight at the protector sword as he seemed to be in thought. At the same time, the artifact spirit stood at the top of one of the mountains, and he quietly paid attention to the hallowed saint masters below. Bai Yu, Donglin Yanxue, Xian Zhan, and Xian Ming are all people who Master were once in touch with, so they've all obtained a protector sword. Only Han Xian is left. Han Xian was once Master's teacher. Before Master left, he specially ordered me to take good care of Han Xian. However, Han Xian hasn't entered the Tower of Radiance. Moreover, the lingering consciousness of the artifact spirit is always affecting me. He wants to assimilate with me and turn me into him. I don't know how much longer I can remain clear-headed, so I need to allocate all these protector swords to people that Master had ties with while I can, murmured the artifact spirit. After a moment of hesitation, he communicated with the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall secretly, and made him gather all the hallowed saint masters who had not entered. Yu Chen did not hesitate. As soon as he received the artifact spirit's message, he left the Tower of Radiance. Before long, Yu Chen brought over 100 hallowed saint masters into the Tower of Radiance. All of these people knew that they were not fated to obtain a protector sword, so they felt nothing towards the swords. The Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xian, happened to be among them. Under Yu Chen's orders, all of these hallowed saint masters entered the region enveloped by light. Swish! However, as soon as they entered the area, there was the whistling of wind, and the fifth protector sword flew down from its mountain with a clear thrum, landing in Han Xian's hand. This is Deep Flow's sword, which ranks 5th out of the 9 protector swords. From now onwards, you are Deep Flow's sword's wielder. An obscure voice rang out in Han Xian's mind. Han Xian was completely stunned as he stared at the protector sword hovering before him. He sensed the obscure connection he had established with the sword. He felt like he was dreaming. A lot of information regarding Deep Flow's sword appeared in his mind. Out of the Master of the Tower of Radiance's 9 retainers, Deep Flow ranked 5th and was a 7th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime. Deep Flow had transformed into the sword. As its wielder, Han Xian had completely grasped all of Deep Flow's powers. As long as he had the sword, his battle prowess would be able to reach the peak even though he was only a Radiant God King. He could fight Grand Primes, and weaker Grand Primes would not be his opponent. The most powerful ancestor of the Han family was only a 9th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Prime right now, while the Patriarch who had expelled him was only an Infinite Prime. However, the power he grasped now was no weaker than a Grand Prime's. This was all like a dream to Han Xian. It did not make sense. I am the descendant of the Grand Exalt. My ancestor was once your master. Artifact Spirit, I don't want the authority to distribute the protector swords. I only want the most powerful protector sword. Gong Sun Ji bellowed in the distance. As he watched the protector swords get allocated one by one, he began to worry about the fact that he still had not obtained one. He changed his request to obtaining the greatest protector sword. A protector sword was equivalent to rising up and becoming great. He did not care about whether he could become the future master of the Tower of Radiance anymore. He needed to obtain a protector sword. The artifact spirit glanced at Gong Sun Ji coldly from the top of the mountain and no longer paid attention to him. Gong Sun Ji held far too much resentment towards Jian Chen, so he would never let Gong Sun Ji inherit a protector sword. If it weren't for the influence of the lingering consciousness of the artifact spirit, you never would have been able to claim the miniature world for yourself, thought the artifact spirit. He was no longer the past artifact spirit, so he felt nothing towards the descendant of the previous master. The protector sword that ranks first is Godslayer's sword. The strongest out of the 9 retainers, Godslayer, transformed into it. Godslayer was an 8th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime when he was still alive, so the sword he transformed into is the strongest out of the protector swords as well. This sword should obviously go to Master's mother. The artifact spirit looked at the sword planted behind him. He had already decided who the sword should go to long ago. However, at this moment, the artifact spirit suddenly quivered. His body condensed from energy almost dispersed. 2 vastly different lights flickered in his eyes as if 2 independent consciousnesses and thoughts were engaged in an intense conflict. The artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance's lingering consciousness had appeared once again, engaging in a battle with the artifact spirit of the Saint Artifact. It wanted to assimilate the artifact spirit of the Saint Artifact. Your age has already passed. You can't assimilate with me, bellowed the artifact spirit. His body would blur and consolidate. He was extremely unstable. However, in the end, all the original light in his eyes vanished. It was replaced by a foreign coldness. His eyes did not seem to possess any feelings at all. Godslayer's sword should go to Master's descendant, the artifact spirit said coldly before extending a finger towards the sword behind him gently. Immediately, Godslayer's sword directly rose up and fell into Gong Sun Ji's hand. Just like that, Gong Sun Ji obtained the most powerful protector sword, Godslayer's sword. Chapter 2439. An end to the distribution, Godslayer's sword. I've actually obtained the greatest protector sword, Godslayer's sword. Ha 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 ha. Gong Sun Ji could not help but laugh aloud as he held Godslayer's sword and sensed the information that poured out from it. It was also at this moment that the white light from the 9 mountains vanished. All the hallowed saint masters gathered there were exposed. The 9 mountains that hovered high in the sky vanished into space once again. They disappeared. What happened? Where did the 9 mountains go? The mountains have vanished. Has the distribution of the protector swords ended already? There are clearly 9 protector swords. Why has it ended after only 6 were allocated? Is there no one else among us who have been chosen? Immediately, noisy discussions sprang up in the surroundings. Many hallowed saint masters who had not been selected by a protector sword grumbled unhappily. They were gloomy and in low spirits. At this moment, 5 powerful balls of light shone. They were as blinding as suns. All the hallowed saint masters looked over, and what they saw immediately made them green with envy. 5 protector swords hovered there, above Donglin Yanxue, Bai Yu, Han Xin, Xian Ming, and Gong Sunji respectively. They were shrouded in a layer of clear light. It went without saying that the 5 of them were part of the people who had obtained protector swords. Isn't that Bai Yu of the Soaring Clouds Peak? Bai Yu has actually gained the recognition of a protector sword. Heavens, are my eyes deceiving me? Bai Yu only has a 2-colored soul core, yet she obtained a protector sword. This is unfair. Han Xin has actually gained the recognition of a protector sword as well. The last 2 people on the Soaring Clouds Peak have both obtained protector swords. That's unbelievable. The Soaring Clouds Peak has truly risen up. In the future, no one will dare to speak ill about the teacher and disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Donglin Yanxue has obtained a protector sword as well? She helped Jian Chen of the martial soul lineage escape before. She's a criminal of our Radiant Saint Hole, so why did the protector sword choose her? A series of cries rang out in the surroundings. Many people struggled to accept the fact that Han Xin, Bai Yu, and Donglin Yanxue had obtained protector swords. In particular, the hallowed saint masters who had scoffed at Bai Yu or provoked her verbally all became ashen when they saw Bai Yu with her protector sword. Elder Mu Shui also stared right at Bai Yu. She faced emotional turmoil. Bai Yu was originally her disciple, but Mu Shui had viciously expelled her due to her ties with Jian Chen. However, she had never thought that Bai Yu would be lucky enough to obtain a protector sword. Looking at the simple sword above Bai Yu's head, Mu Shui suddenly felt bitter inside. At that moment, she suddenly thought about how honorable it would be if Bai Yu was still her disciple. Just how much would her status rise in the Radiant Saint Hall through Bai Yu? Sigh. Mu Shui exhaled gently. She knew that her relationship with Bai Yu was already past the point of no return. It was impossible for them to return to before. This was because Bai Yu had now become an important figure in the Radiant Saint Hall. Through the protector sword, her status and authority had surpassed the elders. Donglin Yanxue. You traitor. You actually have the face to show yourself here. Suddenly, a cry rang out. Gong Sunji discovered that Donglin Yanxue had actually gained the recognition of a protector sword as well, and his eyes immediately shone with cold killing intent. Gong Sunji utterly hated Donglin Yanxue. If it were not for her assisting Jian Chen's escape in the past, it would have been extremely likely for the Grand Exalt's cultivation method to end up in his hands. That was a Grand Exalt's cultivation method after all. How many people in the Saints' world were able to resist such a temptation? If he obtained the cultivation method, his future would be limitless. However, because of Donglin Yanxue, he lost his chance of obtaining the cultivation method, which made Gong Sunji's fury evident. Gong Sunji, you may be a radiant god king and have a greater cultivation than me, but we both wield protector swords, so our statuses are no longer different. You have no right to judge whether I'm a traitor or not, Donglin Yanxue replied coldly. Now that she wielded a protector sword, she was brimming with confidence. How dare you? Gong Sunji called out. Immediately, he ordered the hallowed saint masters around him to back off far away. After that, he swung his protector sword at Donglin Yanxue. However, as soon as he swung it halfway, the protector sword came to a halt. No matter how hard Gong Sunji tried, the protector sword would not fall. It was as if the protector sword was no longer under Gong Sunji's control. Gong Sunji, you were the last one to obtain a protector sword, so you probably haven't digested all the information from the protector sword yet. The past 9 retainers of the Master of the Tower of Radiance had once gone through thick and thin together. They are brothers bound by life and death, so it's impossible for any conflict to happen between them. Now that we wield the protector swords, we will encounter an intense resistance from the protector sword if we attack each other with them, Donglin Yanxue said coldly. Gong Sunji's face sank when he heard that. He had just finished digesting the information from the protector sword. Just like what Donglin Yanxue had said, the protector swords did not allow conflict between their wielders. At this moment, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, appeared. He looked at the sky that had lost all traces of the mountains before looking at the wielders of the protector swords deeply. Looks like the allocation of the protector swords has come to an end. Everyone return. With that, the leader vanished. Father, I obtained a protector sword. Xian Ming showed off his protector sword to Xian Zhan excitedly from within the crowd. Xian Zhan, your son is impressive. He wields a protector sword. From today onwards, your son is a protector of our Radiant Saint Hall. The 7 other vice leaders gathered over as well. They all stared at the protector sword enviously. Good, good, good. Xian Zhan smiled from ear to ear. He felt extremely proud inside as well. To another side, Donglin Xueqi arrived before Donglin Yanxue. She was in high spirits as well. Han Xian, on the other hand, held his protector sword and seemed to be in a daze. The surprise and joy were too great, so he still had not accepted this all as reality yet. The allocation of the protector swords had formally come to an end. 6 of the 9 protector swords had chosen masters, while the 3 others had vanished with the mountains. The artifact spirit did not utter a single word after that. Very soon, all the hallowed saint masters gathered there left. Only the portion who were equivalent to late god kings chose to stay behind. They planned on breaking through to the primordial realm and condensing a soul tree before leaving. Gong Sun Ji did not choose to remain within the Tower of Radiance. He had obtained the greatest protector sword, Godslayer's sword, so his confidence had swelled. He no longer feared the mysterious expert who specifically targeted late radiant god kings. Right when Xian Zhan, Xian Ming, Bai Yu, Donglin Yanxue, Han Xian, and Gong Sun Ji left the Tower of Radiance with the protector swords, the celestial sword saint who sat in the Sword God Mountain slowly opened his eyes. He glanced in the direction of the Radiant Saint Hall indifferently and murmured, "Spirit swords transformed from the members of the ancient sword race. I never thought that the Tower of Radiance of the Radiant Saint Hall would possess traces of the ancient sword race. They've already become extinct." At the same time, a beggar-like, unkempt-only man laid back in a cane chair leisurely as he watched over the interplanar teleportation formation in the imperial capital of the Violet Wind Empire. At this moment, his body stiffened slightly, and he suddenly sat up. A light flickered through his eyes, and he stared straight at the central region of the desolate plain, towards the Radiant Saint Hall. What powerful energy! Why would 6 presences so powerful suddenly appear in the Radiant Saint Hall? Moreover, each presence is at the 7th heavenly layer of Grand Prime at the very least. The greatest expert of the desolate plain, the Celestial Sword Saint, is only a 6th heavenly layer Grand Prime. What happened in the Radiant Saint Hall? Chapter 2440. Returning to the Star Brilliance plane, the unkempt old man had already vanished as he murmured those words. No one discovered his departure. Even the soldiers who guarded the nearby teleportation formation sensed nothing. When the unkempt old man appeared once again, he had crossed an extremely great distance, directly arriving in the central region of the southern region. He stood outside the protective formation of the Radiant Saint Hall. All the protective formations of the Radiant Saint Hall had already been activated, unleashed to their full power. From afar, the entire Radiant Saint Hall was enveloped by a huge energy dome. The unkempt old man did not give off any presence at all. He hovered outside the protective formations like a ghost, and with a slight movement, he simply drifted towards the protective formations. The protective formations of the Radiant Saint Hall seemed completely irrelevant before the old man. They were completely useless. In the end, the unkempt old man passed through the protective formations with ease and entered the Radiant Saint Hall. From the beginning to the end, no one discovered any abnormalities, nor did anyone discover the unkempt old man's existence. Even the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, failed to discover this uninvited guest in their Radiant Saint Hall. The old man did not venture any further in. After entering the Radiant Saint Hall, he hovered beside the protective formations as he stared straight ahead at the sacred hall in the clouds. His gaze seemed to pierce through space and the obstructions of the sacred hall, allowing him to see what was going on inside clearly. It's actually caused by 6 swords. These 6 swords aren't forged from any physical materials. It seems like they were transformed from powerful beings. A light of wonder appeared in the unkempt old man's eyes. After a moment of thought, an extremely obscure senses of the soul pulsed out, enveloping the entire sacred hall. Very soon, he gathered a lot of information. 9 protector swords? I never thought the Radiant Saint Hall would actually hide something like that. With the protector swords, will there be anyone who can stand up to the Radiant Saint Hall? Probably even the celestial sword saint who obtained the 3 live sword god's legacy will be powerless against them. I just wonder if the Radiant Saint Hall will expand outwards with wild ambition. If that happens, blood will probably flow on the desolate plain. The unkempt old man stared in the direction of the sacred hall deeply. Afterwards, he disappeared into the protective formation again and left silently, just like when he arrived. Before long, all the protective formations of the Radiant Saint Hall were shut down, removing all defenses around the entire Radiant Saint Hall. At the same time, Xian Zhan, Xian Ming, Bai Yu, Donglin Yanxue, Han Xian, and Gong Sun Ji stood in the sacred hall, holding up their protector swords at the same time. Immediately, the power from the protector swords erupted like a flood, alarming all the peak experts on the desolate plain. The Radiant Saint Hall did not choose to hide the existence of the protector swords. Instead, they announced them to the public like this. Immediately, all the peak experts on the desolate plain roused. They all left where they cultivated and hurried to the Radiant Saint Hall in shock and unease. At the same time, Jian Chen and Su Ran left the Prosper Plain through a teleportation formation. Soon after their departure, a huge tower suddenly appeared where the heavenly palace of Bixing stood within the central region of the desolate plain. With a heavy thud, it struck the empty ground before the heavenly palace of Bixing heavily. The tower was extremely large, standing several 100,000 meters tall. In the distance it seemed like the backbone of heaven. It was shocking. Moreover, its weight was astonishing. When it struck the ground, the entire Prosper Plain shook a few times. The tower had basically shaken up an entire plain by merely landing on the ground. This tower happened to be the Anata Tower that Jian Chen had returned recently. However, the Anata Tower had become countless times larger than when Jian Chen possessed it. It was also at this moment that the heavenly palace of Bixing suddenly shone brightly. A blinding, golden light radiated from the heavenly palace of Bixing, enveloping the Anata Tower. The golden light seemed to possess a merciless power. Under it, all the sword slashes on the Anata Tower rapidly weakened. The golden light clearly wore down the power of the sword slashes. At the same time, the power hidden in the very depths of the Anata Tower seemed to awaken from the golden light. It began to cooperate with the golden light, wearing away the power of the sword slashes from inside and outside. The sword slashes had been left behind by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt in the past, forming a powerful seal. It kept the Anata Tower sealed up for over 3 million years. It was also because of the seals that not only was the Anata Tower unable to repair itself, but it was not even able to unleash its full power. The sword slashes were intelligent. Sensing a threat, all the sword slashes shone brightly as a terrifying sword chi erupted in resistance. Supreme sword intent enveloped the entire Prosper Plain. There were many figures beyond the land of the heavenly palace of Bixing. Peak experts hovered there silently as they stared at the colossal Anata Tower. It's the Anata Tower. The Anata Tower has been returned. What terrifying sword chi! The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt sure is the greatest expert of the Immortals world. The sword chi he left on the Anata Tower is still so powerful after so many years. The artifact spirit of the heavenly palace of Bixing is currently using the power of the divine hall to refine the sword chi. The heavenly palace of Bixing really is a peak god artifact. Just the power from the divine hall itself is terrifying. Before long, the news that the Anata Tower had been returned to the heavenly palace of Bixing spread across the entire Saints world like wildfire. Many peak experts who were looking for the Anata Tower sighed gloomily when they learned this information. They were filled with pity and regret, and they all gave up on the hunt for Jian Chen. They searched for Jian Chen mainly for the Anata Tower. They wanted to return it to the heavenly palace of Bixing in exchange for great merit, which would allow them to rely on the heavenly palace of Bixing. Now that the Anata Tower had already been returned, it was pointless for them to continue their search for Jian Chen. In another place, Jian Chen and Su Ran constantly passed through teleportation formations. They crossed quite a large region in the Saints' world and returned to the Star Brilliance Plane. Is the Grand Prime you want to kill a part of the Star Brilliance Plane? Su Ran frowned slightly as she stood on the Star Brilliance Plane. The Star Brilliance Plane was the 9 brilliant Starlords' territory, and she felt some fear towards a peak expert like that. I still don't know who the Grand Prime who killed Kaya is, but there is someone who does. Let's go to the 5-point sect, said Jian Chen before stepping into the nearby regional teleportation formation to enter the 5-point sect's territory. Chapter 2441. Already dead, the 5-point sect was a rather renowned peak organization on the Star Brilliance plane. When Jian Chen and Su Ran arrived in the 5-point sect's territory, they learnt the sect's location after some slight investigation. With that, they headed there directly. Before long, Jian Chen and Su Ran arrived at the entrance of the 5-point sect. The 5-point sect was established in a mountain range with extremely abundant origin energy. It shrouded the entire place as a dense white mist. The white mist was not actually mist but dense origin energy instead. The 5-point sect would hold an acceptance ceremony once every 100 years. Many cultivators on the Star Brilliance plane would surge over when that happened, wanting to join the 5-point sect. It was glorious for them to become a part of the 5-point sect. It just happened to be the day of the acceptance ceremony, so the entrance of the 5-point sect was already packed. Various carriages and birds hurried over with young people of extraordinary origins riding them. All of them were gathering there. Many of the cultivators who came possessed modest backgrounds. When they saw the shining carriages and powerful birds, they all showed fear and backed up far away. At this moment, 3 streaks of light appeared on the horizon. It was 3 birds covered in golden feathers. They were quite powerful, all early god kings. A young man stood on the back of one of the birds. He had a striking face and bore undisguised arrogance. As soon as the cultivators saw the 3 beasts, they all avoided them. These people definitely came from a clan with primordial realm experts if they could have early god king mounts. Move! At this moment, someone on the 3rd bird called out. The other 2 birds flapped their wings and descended within the crowd with powerful gusts of wind, creating a mess. That was not it. Perhaps intentionally or purely accidentally, the wings of the 2 birds immediately swept towards the cultivators near them. Weaker people vomited blood and became heavily injured. After all, the 2 birds were early god kings. Even though there was no killing intent, the simple action could cause a lot of harm to weaker cultivators. However, none of the cultivators gathered before the 5-point sect dared to say anything about the ruthless actions of the 2 birds. The 5-point sect did not stop this either. Clearly they did not care. Piss off! At this moment, a cold call rang out. The 3rd bird began to descend as it fluttered its wings. Where it descended just happened to be the boulder where Jian Chen and Su Ran stood. Jian Chen and Su Ran stood right where they were. They showed no intention of moving. The young man on the bird was angered by this. He communicated with his golden bird, and a sliver of coldness immediately appeared in its eyes. It immediately swept its sharp talons towards Jian Chen and Su Ran. Jian Chen frowned. Kai Ya's death had already filled him with killing intent, so he was like an unstable volcano right now. He would erupt violently from the slightest stimulation. His eyes turned cold, and he swung his arm gently. The surroundings exploded with light, becoming filled with sword intent. A resplendent strand of sword chi shot towards the golden bird. As a streak of light, the sword chi was as fast as lightning. With just a flash, the early god king bird had been sliced into 2. Blood rained down. The young man on the bird directly fell from the sky. He was covered in blood and in horrible shape. Why dash? He stood on the ground and pointed at Jian Chen, both surprised and angered. Originally, he wanted to curse and swear, but when he saw how composed Jian Chen was, he did not dare to say anything anymore. Primordial realm. He's actually at the primordial realm. A series of serious cries rang out from the nearby carriages. The god kings in there all realized Jian Chen's strength and were shocked. As soon as that was mentioned, all the cultivators gathered there were astounded. They all looked at Jian Chen. People at the primordial realm were impressive figures in the saints' world. In any peak organization, existences like that would enjoy a certain level of status. It would be very difficult to come across them usually. At this moment, a ruddy old man flew out from the entrance of the 5-point sect. He was a peak god king and the person responsible for accepting disciples. He directly arrived before Jian Chen and asked for the reason why he came with great politeness. "I want to see the Point Cloud Venerable," Jian Chen directly replied. The old man was immediately stunned. He looked at Jian Chen blankly as he began to doubt what he just heard. The Point Cloud Venerable was the ancestor of the 5-point sect, a renowned peak expert of the Star Brilliance plane. It was impossible to meet him so easily. Even some primordial realm experts would struggle to see the Point Cloud Venerable unless they had reached his level of cultivation. That might be a little. The old man was troubled. Sigh. I guessed you would come. At this moment, an obscure voice rang out in the surroundings, making it impossible to find its origins. Ancestor. The peak god king of the 5-Point sect immediately became stunned when he heard the voice. Come in. The Point Cloud Venerable's voice rang out again. With that, the space before Jian Chen twisted before forming a space gate in the end. The space in the saint's world was extremely tough, and the laws were extremely powerful. Creating a space gate under these circumstances could only be achieved by peak experts who had comprehended the laws to an extremely profound level. Looking at the space gate, Jian Chen stepped in without any hesitation at all. Su Ran followed behind him. In the blink of an eye, he and Su Ran vanished from the entrance of the 5-Point sect, leaving behind a large group of stunned cultivators. Jian Chen and Su Ran hovered in the air in the forbidden grounds of the 5-Point sect. The white-robed, transcendent Point Cloud Venerable stood with his hands behind his back as he looked at Jian Chen with mixed feelings. Greetings to Senior. Jian Chen bowed to respect seniority, but his face was a completely different story. He did not show any particular politeness or rudeness. Jian Chen, tell me why you've come, said the Point Cloud Venerable. His gaze was fixed on Jian Chen the entire time. He completely ignored Su Ran who stood beside him. He did not even glance at her. It was as if Su Ran's cultivation as a chaotic prime was nothing in the Point Cloud Venerable's eyes. I want to know that person's identity, said Jian Chen. The person who chased you calls himself the Elder of Mountains and Seas. He reached the 3rd heavenly layer of Grand Prime recently, making him one of the weakest among the 3rd heavenly layer. The Point Cloud Venerable looked at Jian Chen deeply and continued, if you want to seek revenge on the Elder of Mountains and Seas, save your efforts, as he's already dead. What? He's already dead? Jian Chen was stunned. Disbelief filled his face. The Point Cloud Venerable nodded with absolute certainty. That's right, he's indeed dead. Even I don't know who killed him. Chapter 2442. Scheming against Anata. Jian Chen fell silent when he heard that. He had paid a lot of 5-color divine crystals for a single attack from an expert of the Myriad Bone Guild, and it was just to kill the Elder of Mountains and Seas and avenge Kaya. In the end, when he returned to the Star Brilliance Plane to search for news about the Elder of Mountains and Seas, he learnt that his enemy was already dead. He was caught by surprise and was left feeling empty inside. He was not able to avenge Kaya, so Kaya's revenge was not complete. As a result, he felt extremely reluctant to drop the matter here. Then which organization does the Elder of Mountains and Seas belong to? Jian Chen continued to ask a while later. The Point Cloud Venerable could obviously sense that the Elder of Mountains and Seas' death did not reduce Jian Chen's killing intent. As a result, he secretly sighed inside. If the Elder of Mountains and Seas' death had not alarmed the Supreme Blood Tier Grand Exalt, he would have never treated Jian Chen so cautiously. What happened on the Star Brilliance Plane last time allowed the Point Cloud Venerable to deeply understand that Jian Chen was nowhere near as simple as he seemed. The Elder of Mountains and Seas is the founding ancestor of the Gloomwater sect on the Aqua Plane, said the Point Cloud Venerable. The Gloomwater sect of the Aqua Plane, Jian Chen growled as he memorized the name. Afterwards he asked, when Senior destroyed the Elder of Mountains and Seas' heaven-obscuring barrier of flowing water, you said that you would sever the ties of karma between you and me, but we don't know each other at all. May I ask where this so-called karma came from? Was it because the teleportation formation of the 5-Point sect was suddenly shut down? The Point Cloud Venerable only nodded. Jian Chen stared at the Point Cloud Venerable for a while. He remained calm the entire time, showing no particular emotion. Afterwards he clasped his fist towards the Point Cloud Venerable and said, "Thank you for the information on the Elder of Mountains and Seas. I bid you farewell." Jian Chen turned around to leave. The Point Cloud Venerable had suddenly passed the orders to shut down all the teleportation formations connected to other planes, causing Kaya to die on the Star Brilliance Plane. This tie of karma would not be severed so easily. However, he also understood that the Point Cloud Venerable was far more powerful than the Elder of Mountains and Seas. He also grasped the laws of time and the laws of space, so the methods he had prepared for the Elder of Mountains and Seas might be ineffective against the Point Cloud Venerable. He could do nothing to him right now, so he could only be patient. The Point Cloud Venerable stood with his arms behind his back. He looked at Jian Chen's back as if he could tell what Jian Chen's thoughts were. He sighed powerlessly inside and said, "Jian Chen, if you want to destroy the Gloom Water sect, it'll be difficult with just the two of you. That's because the protective formation of the Gloom Water sect was cast down by the Elder of Mountains and Seas through a great price and many resources. It's so powerful that it can block attacks from 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. If you want to get through the formation, you need a 4th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime at the very least. If you insist on destroying the Gloom Water sect, I can help the two of you get through the formation. Moreover, there's a hell spring that produces hell water in the Gloom Water sect. Only a single droplet of hell water forms every million years. It has wondrous effects on even grand exalts, so it's extremely precious. Its value is immeasurable. I believe the Gloom Water sect has at least 10 droplets of hell water right now. As such, if you destroy the Gloom Water sect, there will definitely be many experts who will interfere with this and fight over the hell spring and hell water on the aquaplane. Moreover, the organizations on good terms with the Gloom Water sect may come to reinforce them during crucial times. I can step forward and talk for you so that all the experts on the aquaplane won't interfere with your grievances with the Gloom Water sect," the Point Cloud Venerable guaranteed. He was extremely confident, as if none of the experts on the aquaplane would dare to act up as soon as he stepped forward. The Point Cloud Venerable did indeed possess such strength and prestige because the overall strength of the aquaplane was nowhere close to the Star Brilliance plane. The Point Cloud Venerable was a renowned peak expert on the Star Brilliance plane, and his existence alone allowed the 5-Point sect to stand as the 9th most powerful organization on the Star Brilliance plane. In order to resolve his ties with Jian Chen, the Point Cloud Venerable was going to great lengths. Jian Chen paused when he heard that, but he did not express what he thought. He left with Su Ran. After leaving the 5-Point sect, they moved through the bustling streets. Jian Chen continued to ponder about why the Elder of Mountains and Seas had died. The Elder of Mountains and Seas was a 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Exalt after all. How could such a powerful person die so easily? Jian Chen found it rather difficult to believe this. This was because all Grand Primes were very difficult to kill. Even against powerful opponents that they could not defeat, they could still flee through various secret techniques. As long as the difference in strength was not tremendous, it was basically impossible to stop them. Despite that being the case, the Elder of Mountains and Seas was not even able to flee as a 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Prime, so just how powerful was the mysterious expert who killed him? After pondering some more, he discovered that among all the experts he knew, probably only the Celestial Sword Saint and Motion Yun possessed such ability. Moreover, when he met the Point Cloud Venerable this time, Jian Chen discovered that he behaved rather abnormally as well. He did not act like a peak expert talking to a weaker cultivator at all. The Point Cloud Venerable tried to do everything he could to sever his tie with Jian Chen, which allowed Jian Chen to understand that he probably knew something, but he did not want to tell him. The light in Su Ran's eyes constantly flickered with uncertainty as well. She heard the complete conversation between the Point Cloud Venerable and Jian Chen. The mysterious death of the Elder of Mountains and Seas, as well as the Point Cloud Venerable's attitude towards Jian Chen, made her wonder. Very soon, Jian Chen and Su Ran departed from the Star Brilliance plane. They arrived on the aquaplane through a teleportation formation. However, both Jian Chen and Su Ran failed to notice that a middle-aged man sitting on the highest mountain in the central region of the Star Brilliance plane was constantly paying attention to all of their actions until they left the plane. He was the supreme figure of the Star Brilliance plane, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. It looks like Jian Chen plans on destroying the Gloom Water sect on the aquaplane, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord murmured to himself. The light in his eyes flickered. Then he stood up and left the Star Brilliance plane. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord stood politely in a blood-red divine hall on the Devour plane that the Blood Tier Grand Exalt watched over. A figure shrouded by a bloody mist stood before him. The figure was the Blood Tier Grand Exalt, a sovereign of the Saints' world. Are you saying that we should let Jian Chen die accidentally on the aquaplane and sever Anata's possibility of comprehending the way of heartlessness through Jian Chen? Said the Blood Tier Grand Exalt coldly. Yes, Master. The Anata Grand Exalt was already very powerful. If she continues to comprehend the ways, the Anata Grand Exalt will only become more and more powerful. She might even surpass the warring gods in the end. By then, probably the entire Saints' world will be under the Anata Grand Exalt's control. I believe that if it's possible, we should stop the Anata Grand Exalt, said the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. Chapter 2443, Scarlet Water City. The matter is not as simple as you imagine it to be. If you want to stop an Ata, you'll have to stand against an Ata. And since Jian Chen is an Ata's fruit of ways, an Ata will secretly pay attention to all of his actions at all times. You need to get through an Ata first if you want Jian Chen dead, said the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. He was rather fearful of the Ata Grand Prime. However, if Jian Chen does die from an accident, it will indeed affect an Ata severely. After all, Grand Exalts have become the heavenly ways. The heavenly ways are uncompassionate, so an Ata has thrown herself into the snares of love to comprehend the way of love. She has already defied the laws that the heavenly ways operate on. As a result, she needs to kill Jian Chen to comprehend the way of heartlessness and free herself from the snares of love if she wants to recover her true self. If she loses Jian Chen, her way out of the snares of love, she won't be able to recover. She will become lost, and major problems will happen sooner or later. Master, so should we find a chance? The 9 Brilliant Star Lord said carefully. Before he could finish his words, the Blood Tier Grand Exalt raised his hand and stopped the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. He said, "Do not act recklessly. An Ata is paying attention to all of Jian Chen's movements. Although she still hasn't fully recovered, her will can still descend anywhere in the Saint's world. No one can kill Jian Chen if she wants him alive." However, the ancient chaos chi of the chaotic space is about to erupt. At that time, all the Grand Exalts of the Saint's world, Immortal's world, and Demon's world will go to chaotic space. Naturally, an Ata won't be an exception. If she goes to chaotic space, she won't be able to sense anything that happens in the Saint's world. That might be an opportunity. Master, doesn't that mean we can? The eyes of the 9 Brilliant Star Lord lit up. Whoever kills Jian Chen will become an Ata's mortal enemy. If Jian Chen really does die somehow, his death cannot have anything to do with you, said the Blood Tier Grand Exalt sternly. I understand. Jian Chen and Su Ran walked out from a regional teleportation formation of a bustling city in the central region of the Aqua Plain. They had already entered the Gloom Water Sect's territory. The city they were in right now belonged to the Gloom Water Sect. The Gloom Water Sect had the Elder of Mountains and Seas as their only Grand Prime, but now that he's dead, the Gloom Water Sect will definitely have weakened drastically. The only issue is the chaotic primes in the Gloom Water Sect, Su Ran said to Jian Chen secretly, analyzing the Gloom Water Sect's current strength and discussing the matter of destroying them. The Gloom Water Sect has a total of 5 Great Elders. All 5 Great Elders are chaotic primes. 1 is an early chaotic prime, 2 are mid-chaotic primes, and 2 are late chaotic primes. Dealing with the 3 early and mid-chaotic primes isn't an issue. The real problem lies with the 2 late chaotic primes. I've already investigated their strengths. They're at the 8th and 9th heavenly layer respectively. Su Ran became rather stern. My cultivation is currently at the 5th heavenly layer. If I use the various ancient abilities and secret techniques I possess, I can defeat 6th heavenly layer chaotic primes, but they need to be regular 6th heavenly layer chaotic primes. If their talent is outstanding, or they've comprehended powerful laws and possess extraordinary battle prowess, I'll only be able to match them as equals. The 7th heavenly layer is late chaotic prime. Even if I only encounter regular 7th heavenly layer chaotic primes with my current level of cultivation, I'll only be able to protect myself. The 8th heavenly layer is far more than what I can handle. Then what if you include the 9 Tribulation Incineration Formation? Jian Chen remained calm. He did not feel any pressure from the strength of the Gloom Water Sect at all. This time he was prepared. He had come to kill the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Since he dared to target even a 3rd heavenly layer Grand Prime, a few chaotic primes would not be an issue. You don't understand the 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation completely. It's a wondrous formation that especially attacks the soul. You'll be able to unleash its power to its greatest capacity if you use it on a single person. In such a scenario, even Grand Primes will be affected. However, if you use it against many people, its power will plummet. After all, wondrous formations that target the soul aren't like regular formations. Su Ran looked at Jian Chen and said, moreover, you only have a single 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation, while there are 5 chaotic primes in the Gloom Water Sect. You won't necessarily be able to envelope all the chaotic primes in a single formation, so just in case, we might have to use the attack from the Myriad Bone Guild. Senior, It must be the first time you've come to Scarlet Water City. Please buy a map. It details every location in Scarlet Water City. At this moment, a teenaged girl grabbed Jian Chen and stared at him slightly fearfully with her bright eyes. She tried to sell a map of Scarlet Water City to him. Jian Chen studied the young lady. He discovered that the young woman was pretty. Although she did not possess signs of alluring beauty, she did possess a pure presence. After all, her strength was pitiful. She was only a heaven saint master, and her clothes were tattered. She seemed like a young beggar. Jian Chen could tell with a single glance that the young lady's age was the same as her appearance. She was only a teenager, not an old monster who had cultivated for countless years. Just how much courage did she, who had pitiful strength, need to have to sell maps in the Scarlet Water City where many godhood cultivators dwelled? The slightest carelessness would be enough to claim her life. Jian Chen could not help but look at the young lady deeply. His soft side seemed to be touched when he saw the young lady's fearful, nervous and eager gaze. He said, "All right, I'll buy a copy. How many divine crystals is it?" The young lady's eyes immediately lit up when she heard that. She was overjoyed as she said in a hurry, it's not much at all. Senior, a copy of the map is only 10 low-grade divine crystals." With that, the young lady began to look at Jian Chen nervously as if she was worried that he would change his mind. Jian Chen took out 10 low-grade divine crystals and bought a copy of a map from the young lady. However, he secretly stowed 1,000 high-grade divine crystals into the young lady's low-level space ring. The young lady was just too weak. He did not dare to give her supreme-grade divine crystals, as he was afraid that it would cause her trouble. High-grade divine crystals would be safer. Jian Chen did not talk much with the young lady afterwards. He left with Su Ran. Who knows how many insignificant people there are in the saints' world? How you suddenly show benevolence might be your downfall one day in the future, Su Ran said. She had silently paid attention to all of it. Jian Chen said nothing. He slowly unfurled the map he purchased from the young lady. The map was crudely made. It was not professional and could not be compared to the maps purchasable from the stores. Even the streets drawn on the map were twisted. It was not accurate at all. Jian Chen sighed inside when he looked at the map. He could tell with a single glance that the young lady had probably drawn the map herself. Let go of me, let go of me. I beg you, let me go. Don't take me away." At this moment, a familiar cry rang out. A few cultivators in the same uniform walked over from one side. One of them forcefully picked up the lady who had just sold Jian Chen a map. The cultivators were all deities, so the young lady who was only a heaven saint master was unable to resist at all. Chapter 2444, Destroying the City Lord's Estate, 1. Obviously, the many cultivators on the street saw this. All of them looked at the young lady with sympathy and pity as she was taken away, but none of them dared to stand up and stop the group. It was as if the deities who took away the young lady struck great fear in the hearts of many of the gods and overgods present. They were afraid of provoking them. Jian Chen's eyes turned cold at the sight of this. With a flash, he arrived before the people and asked emotionlessly, "May I ask what crimes this sister has committed and why you want to take her away?" The deities were all stunned when they saw Jian Chen block their way. However, they sneered soon afterwards. One of them scoffed. "Kid, do you know who we are? It's best if you mind your own business, or you won't be walking out of Scarlet Water City alive." "Sir, these are the subordinates of the young city lord. You can't afford to offend them." At the same time, many of the cultivators communicated with Jian Chen secretly. As soon as Jian Chen heard them mention the young city lord, he immediately understood everything. His eyes became frosty and he said coldly, "Let her go." Seeing how Jian Chen insisted on standing in their way, the young city lord's subordinates were angered, and their faces sank. Immediately, 3 of them drew low-quality saint artifacts and howled as they charged towards Jian Chen aggressively. Jian Chen was indifferent. He only swung his hand casually, and the street immediately became filled with dazzling light. Sharp sword Qi had already enveloped all of the young city lord's subordinates. Immediately, the 3 low-quality saint artifacts shattered under the light, reduced to dust. Under the sword Qi, the deities who were taking the young lady away seemed to be carved up. Their flesh began to vanish as their bones turned to dust. In an instant, all the deities vanished. They were reduced to nothingness under the light. However, they were still alive. Their souls hovered there blankly as they stared at Jian Chen in fear. Jian Chen had only destroyed their bodies, not their souls. The bustling street fell silent. Everyone could not help but stop on the two sides of the street as they stared at the souls floating in the air. They were shocked and felt emotional turmoil. Destroying the bodies of a few deities was nothing difficult. The overgods in the crowd could easily achieve the same thing. However, destroying their bodies as easily and casually as Jian Chen, with just a simple gesture, was simply too shocking. Why, you wait here. At this moment, the souls finally returned to their senses. After throwing that down, they immediately flew towards the city lord's estate. As if he had just completed a small task, Jian Chen ignored the flying souls and slowly made his way over to the young lady. He asked, "Are you fine?" The young lady was extremely pale. Fear and dread filled her face. She could not help but pull away from Jian Chen, and she said with a trembling voice, She wanted to tell him she was fine, but she was unable to utter the last two words with her trembling voice. After all, she was only a teenager. She had never experienced something like that, so her mental fortitude obviously was not tough. She had been stunned by what had just happened. "Don't be afraid. As long as I'm here, no one in Scarlet Water City will be able to harm you," Jian Chen said softly. Su Ran stood to one side and watched everything unfold. She did not say anything at all. In her eyes, Jian Chen's actions were completely pointless. Who knows how many years she had cultivated already, and who knows how many times she had seen matters similar to this. As a result, she had already grown numb to it all. She could never take pity on people like Jian Chen. At this moment, a pressure appeared. From the direction of the city lord's estate, over 100 armored soldiers flew over under the lead of an old man. "Caretaker, it's him. He's the one who destroyed our bodies," a soul said loudly from beside the old man. Even without the old man's orders, the soldiers behind him all surged forth and surrounded Jian Chen and the young lady. The young lady was nervous. She was terrified as her body trembled. "Don't be scared." Jian Chen placed his arm on the young lady's shoulder gently and comforted her. "Sir, who are you? How dare you injure people of our city lord's estate in Scarlet Water City? How bold of you!" The old man hovered 3 meters in the air and called out coldly. "What crimes has this young lady committed? Why do you want to take her away?" Jian Chen stared straight at the old man. The old man immediately snorted coldly in response. "It's all up to our city lord to decide who we want to take and what crimes we want to charge them with. However, you have committed a crime punishable by death. You injured the people of our city lord's estate." With that, the old man waved his hand and ordered, "Capture this person. If he resists, kill him on the spot." Immediately, all the cultivators gathered in the surroundings moved far away. The many structures that stood around the street activated their formations at that moment as well. The soldiers who surrounded Jian Chen and the young lady immediately fell into a battle formation. Powerful energy surged towards Jian Chen aggressively. Is the city lord's estate of the Scarlet Water City this unreasonable? If that's the case, there's no need for the city lord's estate to exist any longer, Jian Chen said coldly. He directly ignored the formation that the soldiers stood in. Even though many of the soldiers were gods and their formation could threaten over gods, it was still nothing in Jian Chen's eyes. He swung his hand just like before and collapsed the formation, heavily injuring over 100 soldiers in a single moment. Afterwards, he arrived before the old man like a ghost with a single movement. Before the old man could even react, Jian Chen grabbed him by the throat and lifted him up. The old man was shocked. Only now did he realize just how terrifying of an expert he had provoked. As he was filled with fear, he forced out with great difficulty, "The Scarlet Water City is the territory of the Gloomwater sect, and our city lord is an envoy of the Gloomwater sect with a very great status. If you offend us, that's offending the Gloomwater sect. The Gloomwater sect will never spare you." He would have been better off not mentioning the Gloomwater sect, but now that he did, Jian Chen's killing intent immediately skyrocketed. Originally, he had no intentions of killing the old man, but Jian Chen struggled to contain his killing intent after the old man mentioned the Gloomwater sect. The hand that grasped the old man's neck suddenly flashed with sword chi. A strand of sharp sword chi directly punched through his head, killing him on the spot. Chapter 2445. Destroying the City Lord's Estate, 2. The instant the old man died, a powerful senses of the soul suddenly swept through the Scarlet Water City, engulfing all the streets. The owner of the senses of the soul was a peak god king. Originally, it would have been impossible for him to discover Jian Chen's existence with the strength of the senses of his soul. However, Jian Chen did not hide himself. He let out his presence slightly, disguising himself as an early god king. As a result, he was clearly exposed before the senses of the soul. Humph! A cold snort rang out in Jian Chen's head. It was filled with killing intent. At the same time, the ground of Scarlet Water City suddenly shook. A powerful formation rose up, enveloping the entire Scarlet Water City. Even all the teleportation formations there stopped operating. In an instant, the entire city was cut off from the outside world. Jian Chen glanced past the protective formation of Scarlet Water City, before looking in the direction of the City Lord's estate. He did not let this bother him. Instead, he looked at the young lady and asked, "Little sister, where are your parents?" With that, the young lady seemed to forget about her fear. Her eyes reddened, and she slowly told him about her background. As it turned out, her name was Feng Jinger. She was only 16 this year. Both her parents passed away right after she was born. She was single-handedly raised by her grandfather. Her grandfather, an insignificant person who lived at the bottom of society in the saints' world. He was only a saint emperor, not even at the origin realm. Even with that being the case, although Feng Jinger did not have endless cultivation resources, she was still able to live a life without worrying about the basic necessities. However, good things never lasted. Her grandfather was injured in the city 3 years ago. He was at death's door and could pass away at any time. After losing her grandfather's support, Feng Jinger began to depend on herself. She copied a map of the Scarlet Water City her grandfather found many years ago, creating crude maps by hand to sell. Then she used the divine crystals generated by the maps to buy low-level medicinal pills that cost 100 low-grade divine crystals for her grandfather. My grandfather needs to eat a pill a month to stay alive. It has already been over 20 days. And I've already sold 9 maps this month. I only need to sell 1 more before I gather all the divine crystals needed for a pill. Fortunately, they didn't take me away, or I would have never been able to sell 10 maps. If I don't feed my grandfather the pill, he'll die. These people are just evil. Feng Jinger was still shaken. She only thought about her grandfather now. Jian Chen sighed as he listened to the young lady's difficult, miserable fate. After a moment of thought, he said, "I plan on going to the City Lord's estate." "Little sister, just come with us. I want you to personally witness the people who wanted to capture you vanish before your eyes." Jian Chen also understood that this might be far too horrific a sight to a young lady who had not completely grown up. However, this was the saints' world, a world where the strong preyed on the weak. The only way to survive was to adapt to the laws. At the same time, 3 middle-aged men sat at a round table within the City Lord's estate. The table was covered in various delicious dishes. One of them happened to be the City Lord of Scarlet Water City, Guan Feiyu. The other 2 were envoys of the Gloom Water sect. They were all late god kings. "Brother Feiyu, why did your complexion suddenly change? And it seems like the protective formation of the city has been activated as well." The 2 envoys looked at the City Lord and said rather politely. Not only was Guan Feiyu an envoy like them, but the Guan family also had an ancestor who was an authoritative elder in the Gloom Water sect. As a result, the 2 envoys were very careful before Guan Feiyu. They flattered him, unwilling to offend him at all. "It's nothing. Just a small problem has appeared. Just wait here for a while. I'll be right back." Guan Feiyu stood up and was about to leave. Boom! However, at this moment, a deafening sound rang out, and the entire City Lord's estate shook. The formations around the City Lord's estate had encountered a powerful attack. Guan Feiyu's face immediately darkened. Killing intent flooded his eyes and he said coldly, "I was just about to go find you, yet you've come yourself. Humph, you're looking to die for acting so reckless after killing people of my estate." With a single movement, Guan Feiyu vanished. Jian Chen stood with his arms behind his back outside the City Lord's estate. He faced the main entrance calmly. Behind him stood the indifferent Su Ran and the flustered Feng Jinger. Over a dozen soldiers tossed and turned on the ground around Jian Chen as they called out in pain. "Who are you? Why have you come to make trouble in my Scarlet Water City? A call rang out. The city lord, Guan Feiyu, had appeared. He hovered in the air as his presence surged. The two other envoys of the Gloomwater sect hovered behind Guan Feiyu. They gave off sharp presences as they expressed that they stood on Guan Feiyu's side. The young city lord of the Scarlet Water City wants to capture this young lady. May I ask what crime she has committed and why you want to capture her? Jian Chen asked calmly. She's a mere heaven saint master. Let alone capture, even if she's killed in the streets, there won't be any problems at all. No one dares to defy the decisions of our city lord's estate as long as they're in Scarlet Water City. On the other hand, not only have you killed people of our city lord's estate, but you've even attacked the city lord's estate out of ill intention as well. That's a crime punishable by death. You deserve no mercy. Guan Feiyu said coldly. His eyes were sharp like a hawk's as he stared right at Jian Chen. He did not dare to be careless when he saw how fearless Jian Chen was. Immediately, he formed a seal with his hands and controlled the protective formation of Scarlet Water City. Immediately, the protective formation that enveloped the entire Scarlet Water City shone brightly. Pulses of powerful energy surged out like tidal waves as a grand pressure flooded the surroundings. It made all the people in Scarlet Water City pale in shock. Guan Feiyu sure was cautious. Even though Jian Chen only presented himself as an early God King, quite a lot weaker than the late God King Guan Feiyu, the former still chose to use the formation to deal with the enemy. The protective formation of the Scarlet Water City had been cast down by the primordial realm ancestor of the Guan family. As it operated, it could even hold off primordial realm experts for a while. Of course, that was only referring to early infinite primes. A streak of light fell from the sky. It seemed to be tangible as it illuminated the surroundings. With terrifying energy that struck fear into the hearts of all the cultivators in the city, it directly enveloped Jian Chen. Chapter 2446. Destroying the City Lord's Estate, 3. You've actually activated the protective formation cast down by the ancestor of the Guan family. It'll consume quite a lot of energy now that you've activated it. Aren't you overreacting a little, Brother Feiyu? To use the power of the protective formation to kill an early God King is a little over the top. The two envoys from the Gloomwater sect said sternly from behind Guan Feiyu. Clearly, the two envoys did not take Jian Chen seriously. However, at this moment, something that shocked the two envoys happened. Jian Chen extended a finger towards the sky. A strand of sword chi immediately shot out from his fingertip, surging into the sky like a streak of light with the power of the laws of the sword. When the sword chi collided with a streak of energy from the protective formation, the boom that they expected did not occur. The huge streak of energy was directly cleaved in half by the sword chi, causing energy to scatter in the surroundings. The sword chi did not slow down at all. It continued to rise up in the sky, striking the protective formation of Scarlet Water City heavily with devastating power. Boom! Immediately, a deafening sound exploded in the sky. The entire Scarlet Water City shook violently. The ground trembled like a terrifying earthquake was happening. All the ancient structures standing within the city collapsed. The protective formation over Scarlet Water City was ripped open, and the many crucial points all exploded. In a single moment, the protective formation was completely destroyed, damaged beyond repair. Having personally witnessed this, the eyes of the city lord, Guan Feiyu, widened. He stared straight at the sky. He was shocked. Primordial realm. Guan Feiyu became rather tongue-tied. He stared at Jian Chen with an ugly expression as deep fear, and a hint of anger filled his eyes. Guan Feiyu swore to himself, since you're a primordial realm expert, couldn't you just expose your strength right from the start? Against a primordial realm expert, he would have never dared to act up. He would try to discuss and negotiate everything. However, this person just happened to hide his strength, causing the originally tiny matter to develop into something like this. Guan Feiyu became even more pained when he thought about the destroyed formation around Scarlet Water City. It was a primordial realm formation. It had been extremely difficult to cast down. Senior, Guan Feiyu said with an ugly expression. However, Jian Chen did not give him any time to speak. He extended a finger and produced another powerful strand of sword chi. It struck the defensive formation around the city lord's estate with the pressure of the primordial realm. There were two powerful formations within Scarlet Water City. The first formation was used to protect the entire city. The second formation was around the city lord's estate. It was used to protect the estate. The two formations had both reached the levels of the primordial realm. Moreover, the formation around the city lord's estate was even more powerful than the one around the city. However, its power was still limited. It could only block attacks from third heavenly layer infinite primes. Jian Chen, on the other hand, possessed battle prowess equivalent to the sixth heavenly layer of infinite prime without using a god artifact. A formation that could only stop third heavenly layer infinite primes would obviously be useless before him. With another boom, the formation around the city lord's estate shattered from Jian Chen's strike. Powerful energy wreaked havoc, directly demolishing the ancient structure that had been standing for a very long time ago. In an instant, the city lord's estate was reduced to ruins. All the armored soldiers and a few servants fled from the ruins in horrible shape. Jian Chen's control over his power had reached a level of great mastery. The power of his strike happened to be exactly enough to destroy the formation, and the energy shockwaves were just enough to demolish the estate. However, it would not harm those uninvolved. "Senior, what are you trying to do? You can't forget that our Scarlet Water City stands in the territory of the Gloom Water sect." Guan Feiyu's face changed drastically. He had witnessed Jian Chen's strength from how he destroyed the formation around the estate so easily. "I said it already. There's no need for the city lord's estate to remain," said Jian Chen as killing intent churned from him. The destruction of the Gloom Water sect would begin with Scarlet Water City. Sensing Jian Chen's killing intent, Guan Feiyu realized the severity of the matter. He no longer hesitated and immediately crushed a jade talisman to ask for help from the Gloom Water sect. "Brother Feiyu, the two of us will return to the sect immediately to seek reinforcement." The two envoys from the Gloom Water sect had paled already. They both bid farewell to Guan Feiyu without any prior agreement and did not pay any consideration to his response. They immediately flew off in the direction of the Gloom Water sect. "No one from the Gloom Water sect can leave." Jian Chen's eyes were cold. He did not even glance at the two envoys, but his eyes suddenly shone extremely brightly. They seemed to be filled with endless swords qi such that people would not dare to stare right into them. Suddenly, a terrifying sword intent radiated out, enveloping a range of 100,000 kilometers. This was Jian Chen's ultimate way of the sword. As soon as he used it, Jian Chen became the only ruler within the range of 100,000 kilometers. He possessed authority over the lives of all things. He only needed a single thought to determine the fate of all cultivators weaker than him. The envoys who had fled several thousand kilometers away through secret techniques only felt that they now stood in a sea of sword qi. The sword qi drowned them instantly, turning them into a bloody mist. Before they could even cry out, they were dead. "Why, you've actually killed disciples of the Gloom Water sect," Guan Feiyu cried out. The Gloom Water sect was one of the peak sects in the region. Killing a disciple of the Gloom Water sect was not as simple as killing a person from his city lord's estate. At this moment, a surprised cry rang out. A completely naked young man was pulled into the sky under the restraint of an invisible power. He was furious and taken aback. The young man was the young city lord of Scarlet Water City. From his appearance, he was clearly going at it. Jian Chen suddenly looked at the young man. In the next moment, the young man produced a chilling cry. He seemed to be in extreme pain as if he was undergoing the most brutal torture in the world. Starting from his feet, his body vanished bit by bit, turning into a bloody rain. It gradually spread to his waist and then to his head. In just a few seconds, the young city lord of Scarlet Water City was dead. He had died to Jian Chen's ultimate way of the sword. Just like the two other disciples of the Gloom Water sect, he had not died with a complete body. In the end, Jian Chen looked towards the city lord. With a thought, Guan Feiyu directly died. He followed the fate of the three other people. With Jian Chen's current level of cultivation, he could control the fates of all people with his ultimate way of the sword. Only primordial realm experts could fend it off. From today onwards, the city lord's estate no longer exists. I give everyone unrelated half a minute to leave. After that time, I will be killing without mercy, Jian Chen called out coldly. With that, figures flickered through the ruins. Many dusty soldiers and servants fled as quickly as they could. In half a minute, not a single person alive remained within the ruins of the city lord's estate. Jian Chen waved his hand slightly, and a sky full of sword qi immediately descended. It pierced through the ruins like rain. In an instant, the ruins vanish. The entire city lord's estate was gone, leaving not a single pebble behind. Chapter 2447, Threads of Karma. The city lord's estate, a huge structure, had disintegrated under Jian Chen's sword qi. The surroundings around the city lord's estate had already become packed. The disturbance there was just too great, so it had alarmed the entire city. All the cultivators with a certain level of strength had gathered around. They stood far away as they blankly stared at the structure that had vanished. They were in emotional turmoil. Not only was the city lord's estate the existence that controlled the entire city, but it was also the representative of the Gloomwater sect established here. It possessed a tremendous background. However, the entire place had actually been flattened. People could not be more shocked right now. Everyone's gaze gathered on the young man in white, fluttering robes. Admiration, shock, fear, and dread all appeared in their eyes. Feng Jinger, you don't need to worry about the people of the city lord's estate causing you any more trouble. Jian Chen's face did not change. He remained calm and composed. He turned around and spoke to the young lady behind him. However, Feng Jinger did not seem to hear Jian Chen's words. Wide-eyed, she stared straight at the city lord's estate that had been reduced to open ground. Disbelief filled her face. The city lord's estate was an indomitable, holy place in Feng Jinger eyes. They were the absolute ruler of Scarlet Water City, and no one dared to defy their orders. But now the godlike city lord's estate had vanished completely right before her. This left Feng Jinger dazed for quite some time. She had never expected that the young senior, who had just bought a crude map from her, was actually a terrifyingly powerful expert. However, at this moment, Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared straight at Feng Jinger. He saw strands and strands of karma on Feng Jinger. Every single thread led off into a different direction. Though this was nothing, karma was everywhere in the world. All cultivators would be bound by karma to a certain degree. However, aside from supreme experts who had reached an exceptional level of cultivation, only those who had comprehended the way of karma could see these threads. Jian Chen had comprehended the way of karma from the samsaric immortal exalt in the Neptunian divine palace, so he was able to see these threads. First, he had bought a map from Feng Jinger, and then he saved her from the people of the city lord's estate. Now that he had destroyed the city lord's estate in a single stroke because of what happened with Feng Jinger, there was karma between the two of them. But to Jian Chen's surprise, the thread of karma between him and Feng Jinger was extremely thick. From how strong the thread appeared, it seemed to greatly exceed the level of acquaintances. It was thousands of times more than that. Jian Chen was stunned and bewildered. Why was his thread of karma with Feng Jinger so strong? Jian Chen looked at Feng Jinger deeply. The light in his eyes flickered. He felt uncertain. A while later he said, Feng Jinger, let's go to see your grandfather. With that, Jian Chen waved his hand, and the laws of space permeated his surroundings. He had already vanished with Feng Jinger. He could see Feng Jinger's threads of karma, so he already knew exactly where her grandfather stayed in Scarlet Water City. Sigh! Su Ran sighed gently as she looked in the direction that Jian Chen and Feng Jinger had vanished in. Afterwards, she vanished as well. In an extremely quiet place within Scarlet Water City, there was a small stone hut constructed from a messy pile of rocks. It was gloomy inside, and the place had a slight stench. At this moment, the space before the stone hut suddenly pulsed, and Jian Chen and Feng Jinger appeared there silently. Ah! Only now did Feng Jinger return to her senses. She looked at the stone hut she had lived in for over a decade, and she could not help but cry out. Was she not at the city lord's estate earlier? How had she suddenly returned home? Feng Jinger felt like she was dreaming. Let's go in and see your grandfather, said Jian Chen. His thread of karma with Feng Jinger was so thick, so he began to treat Feng Jinger differently as well. Although he had no idea why his thread of karma with her was so thick, he did understand that his relationship with her was not as simple as mere acquaintances. Feng Jinger glanced at Jian Chen fearfully. After hesitating slightly, she pushed open the small, damaged, wooden door and entered. The stone hut was very small and very dim. Close to a corner, a pale old man lay on a stone bed powerlessly. The floor beside him was covered with dried blood. The stench came from the blood. Feng Jinger seemed to have grown accustomed to the stench, so she did not show any disgust at all. She arrived beside the old man as soon as she entered the stone hut, and she showed deep care and sorrow. "Grandfather, grandfather, I'm back!" Feng Jinger called out softly as if she was afraid of scaring the old man by being too loud. The old man's eyelids trembled gently from the voice. Finally, he opened them with great difficulty, revealing a pair of gloomy eyes. Jian Chen stared at the old man. He wanted to see whether his thread of karma with Feng Jinger was related to the old man or not. However, in the end, he was disappointed. He had no threads of karma with the old man at all. In other words, the old man had nothing to do with him before he had come here. "Jinger, you're back. You haven't been abused these days you spent outside, right?" said the old man weakly. His eyes were filled with love and shame. Feng Jinger shook her head. "Grandfather, I've already sold 9 maps this month. I only need to sell 1 more map, and I'll be able to buy a pill for you so that you can live another month. Don't worry, grandfather. I will definitely work hard on selling maps. Once I make enough divine crystals, I'll buy the better pill so that grandfather can completely recover. Let your grandfather ingest this pill. Not only can this pill completely heal your grandfather's wounds, it can also let your grandfather make great progress in his cultivation," said Jian Chen. He passed a thumb-sized pill to Feng Jinger. "You're actually giving a god-tier pill to a cultivator who's only a saint emperor. You sure are wasteful," Su Ran could not help but mutter from outside the stone hut. Thank you, senior." Feng Jinger accepted the pill from Jian Chen in surprise and joy before feeding it to her grandfather excitedly. Immediately, surging energy enveloped the old man. The effects of the god-tier pill kicked in, wrapping around the old man as a faint mist. "It'll only take a few seconds for your grandfather to make a complete recovery. However, the pill is very powerful, so the remaining power will increase your grandfather's cultivation. As a result, not only will your grandfather will not awaken immediately after recovering. He'll spend some time cultivating," Jian Chen said to Feng Jinger. After a moment of hesitation, he took out a cultivation method and a few cultivation resources from his space ring and passed it to Feng Jinger. He said, "From today onwards, don't sell maps anymore. Find a quiet place and cultivate. Only by becoming powerful can you survive in this world." Thank you, senior. I will definitely return senior's kindness in the future." Feng Jinger teared up in gratitude. Chapter 2448. Ant-like infinite prime. This was all the help that Jian Chen gave Feng Jinger. Jian Chen did not understand why his threads of karma with Feng Jinger would be so thick. Before he understood the secrets hidden within the threads of karma, Jian Chen obviously would not nurture Feng Jinger with everything that he had. Threads of karma could be good and bad. Unfortunately, his comprehension of the way of karma was just too shallow. He did not have a deep understanding, so he was unable to tell if his karma with her was good or bad. As a matter of fact, he could only see Feng Jinger's threads of karma because her level of cultivation was far too low. If he encountered a cultivator at a higher level, he would not be able to see their threads of karma. The way of karma. Jian Chen muttered inside as he secretly shook his head. Currently, he focused on the way of the sword. He did not have the spare time or effort to devote to the way of karma. He had no idea when he could comprehend the way of karma to a great level. He had comprehended far too many laws right now. Aside from the strongest laws of the sword, there were the laws of creation, laws of destruction, laws of fire, laws of corrosion, laws of curses, laws of strength and laws of space. He had obtained these 7 laws from the golden core of laws he inherited underground in the desolate plain. Some of them were only at the level of early God King right now, so they were not particularly useful in battle. Moreover, there were the laws of the hallowed and martial soul force. As a result, he did not have sufficient time or energy to increase his other laws right now. After all, the comprehension of every single law required an extremely long amount of time. He had to advance step by step, as there were no shortcuts. "An infinite prime is heading over," Su Ran's voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. Jian Chen nodded. He knew that the city lord had crushed a jade talisman before he passed away, so he was already expecting a primordial realm expert to hurry over. This was exactly what he wanted. If he could kill some primordial realm experts here, the resistance he encountered when he went to destroy the Gloomwater sect would lessen. Jian Chen and Su Ran departed silently. They left Scarlet Water City and flew in the direction of the Gloomwater sect. In the end, They stopped 10 million kilometers away from Scarlet Water City. The teleportation formations of Scarlet Water City had been closed down, so people had to pass by this area if they wanted to reach Scarlet Water City from the Gloomwater sect. Around 5 minutes later, an old man shot over from the distance as a blur, heading in the direction of Scarlet Water City. He gave off a tremendous presence. From its strength, he was clearly an infinite prime. Jian Chen hovered in the air with his arms crossed at the same altitude as the old man. He just happened to block the old man's path. "Who are you?" The old man stopped 1,000 meters from Jian Chen. His eyes shone as he stared at Jian Chen with a piercing gaze. "Are you from the Gloomwater sect?" Jian Chen replied emotionlessly with a question. The old man snorted and barked, "I'm Guan Wan, an elder of the Gloomwater sect. Sir, what are your intentions in blocking my path?" As he said that, Guan Wan's senses of the soul flooded out. It instantly reached a range of 10 million kilometers, enveloping the entire Scarlet Water City. Immediately, his face changed drastically. Killing intent surged from him, as he was furious. He called out, "Who is it? Who was the one who destroyed the City Lord's estate? I'll crush you to pieces." Suddenly, Guan Wan looked at Jian Chen. His gaze was terrifying as he bellowed, "It's you! It must have been you! You've actually destroyed my Guan family." "That's right. It was me. However, with your strength as a second heavenly layer infinite prime, you will probably come nowhere close to crushing me to pieces. Moreover, I haven't come to destroy your Guan family, only the Gloomwater sect," Jian Chen said coldly. He did not take the Guan family seriously at all. With that, Jian Chen struck out decisively. Sword chi radiated from him, and countless strands of them suddenly appeared. They gathered together, immediately enveloping Guan Wan as a blinding cluster of light. Jian Chen comprehended the ultimate way of the sword, the king among the way of the sword. His laws of the sword were so powerful that they had greatly surpassed experts at the same level. He only needed a single thought to condense countless strands of sword chi that would change according to his thoughts. Even though Guan Wan defended as quickly as he could, he was unable to fend off the sword chi that came in from all directions. The barrier he had created with his powers shattered under the sword chi. Even the armor on his body only lasted for a few seconds before becoming riddled with holes. Although Guan Wan was a second heavenly layer infinite prime, he did not possess a god artifact. His strongest armor was only a supreme quality saint artifact. Jian Chen could easily destroy saint artifacts at such a level with his current strength. "Arg!" Guan Wan roared out furiously. He used a secret technique and energy surged from his body. The power of laws enveloped him as well, and he struck out as hard as he could. After dispersing some sword chi, he charged away as quickly as he could. When he emerged from Jian Chen's domain of sword chi, he was in extremely horrible shape. He was covered in various cuts, causing him to bleed everywhere. "Who are you exactly?" Guan Wan's face changed. He became extremely stern as he cried out in fright. In just a single clash, he had been reduced to such horrible shape. The young man's strength was beyond what he could handle. In the next moment, a simple jade talisman appeared in Wan Guan's hand. He wanted to seek help from the sect as quickly as he could. An infinite prime requesting help will probably alarm the chaotic primes. "I can't let you do that." Jian Chen's gaze turned cold. An extremely thin streak of white light flickered on his fingertip. It was a strand of sword chi, an extremely powerful strand of sword chi, condensed from Jian Chen's ultimate way of the sword. Even though it seemed nothing special, it was powerful enough to surprise mid-infinite primes. The strand of sword chi flashed, and in the next moment, Guan Wan grunted painfully. Wan Guan's wrist, connected to the hand that held the jade talisman, spurted with blood. His hand had been cut off. Before he could crush the jade talisman, it fell towards the ground. "Die!" Jian Chen's eyes were cold. He suddenly extended a finger towards Wan Guan, and the space there trembled slightly. A finger-sized hole silently appeared between Wan Guan's eyes. His head had been pierced, and his soul had shattered. He was dead. A second heavenly layer infinite prime had died to Jian Chen's hands just like that, slain effortlessly. Jian Chen did not feel any particular emotion. With a flash, he arrived beside Guan Wan and removed his space ring before stowing away his corpse as well. The corpses of primordial realm experts were extremely precious to Jen Chen right now. They were the best nourishment for the immortal devouring orchid. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.